Hello, my name is Marvin Heemeyer. It is not my fault. What that one guy say? Those who made me your enemies, or enemy, those who made me your enemy, they are the guilty ones. The Thompsons are guilty. The Dochefs are guilty. The Granby Town Board is guilty. The Granby Planning Commission is guilty. My neighbors are guilty. It took all of you 10 years to get me. And you got me, no doubt about it. I got screwed big time. We talked today about it to Dave Patner. He knows I got fucked. And he knows that they do it. And they get away with it. There's nothing you can do about it, he says. Well, I'm going to do something about it. It may only change people for a generation. Maybe two. May not change them at all. Maybe make them worse. That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way it will be. God's will be done. Through me. What I own is just going to be a pittance compared to what I'm going to take. But hopefully the community will learn something from this.
911, what is your emergency? Ask them to help us get a National Guard unit, maybe with a helicopter to... Let's get hold of Granby Town Hall. You need a National Guard unit and a helicopter? It's going out towards the highway. The street is going out towards the highway.
Defending life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ground units, initiate Directive 7395. Destroy all communists. Truths to be self-evident that all Americans are created equal and are endowed with certain unalienable rights. Communist target acquired. Probability of mission hindrance 0%. is the reward of valor.
It's going pretty good. How you doing? Yeah, so did you like know a lot about him before today? At least heard of him. Yeah, I watched like a couple documentaries. Wait, muted. Hang on a second. No, we're not muted. Um, I hope not, at least. Um, yeah, I watched a couple documentaries about him. He's like a very interesting case too, because usually people who do stuff like this, like their goal is to hurt people, but like his goal was really just kind of like property damage for revenge's sake. And I don't know, to just sort of get the word out that he was mistreated. And that's interesting, like, because despite having all that firepower, like nobody died. Well, he died, but you know what I mean. Like he didn't kill anybody.
Yes, so he sucked at it. Basically, is what you're getting at, right?
No, I don't think he wanted to kill people.
Hmm.
I think he just wanted to do damage to the institutions that wronged him, and they really did wrong him, as far as I know.
How's it going, Fear Monarch? You were right. That was on my end.
Yes.
I was muted, but I got it right. So
Good. At least we figured it out quickly.
Yep. I think, are we just ready to get into it?
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's do this.
Of a reasonable man who was forced to do unreasonable things. I'm Aiden Mattis, and welcome back to the Lore Lodge.
This is from the Lore Lodge. They're like a pretty good channel for... I've watched stuff about like
Shortly after
cryptids
2 p.m.
from them
on
before.
June 4th, 2004, workers at the Mountain Park concrete plant in Granby, Colorado, heard a commotion coming from the muffler shop next door. Turning to see what it was, they witnessed a behemoth vehicle rolling towards them on massive treads, which they soon realized was a bulldozer, and one covered in thick steel plates. And while nobody could see inside, they were all pretty sure that they knew who was controlling it: Marvin Heemeyer. Police tried to destroy the treads, breach the cabin, and shots were even fired at the bulldozer, but no matter what anybody did, they could not
This
stop
whole
the thing. Over the course
rampage
of the
too
next
was
2
level
hours,
99
Heemeyer
crime boss versus level 1 police thug. Like there was nothing they could do to this thing.
Yeah, I read that
It's
the
just a
governor,
juggernaut.
yeah, the governor of the state was like looking at sending in a fucking attack helicopter with javelin missiles to fucking.
Oh yeah, in public. That's a pretty good idea. I wonder why that one didn't go through. They did bring in a boss fight though. They had like other construction vehicles fight it.
Which, I mean, come on, that's funny as fuck.
It's very cool. Yeah.
methodically and efficiently carved a path of destruction through Granby, causing over $1 million in property damage. The carnage ended only when the treads of his tank, now affectionately referred to as KillDozer by many, slipped into the basement of a building and rendered him stuck. With his modified Komatsu D355A immobilized and law enforcement all around, Heemeyer chose to go out on his own terms using a .357 handgun. And then something very strange happened. While those who were associated with Marv's targets were quick to call an insane or even a domestic terrorist, some people blamed the town. While of course the people of Granby were shaken, those whose properties were left unscathed by Heemeyer's tank were at least willing to forgive and even to understand. They pointed to a history of animosity between Heemeyer and certain other business owners in the community, some of whom even served on the town board. Zoning disputes, a sewer issue, and just a general sense that Heemeyer was being jerked around were all key aspects of the discourse. And this ultimately culminated in a rather sharp divide in public opinion. In Granby, Heemeyer's actions were generally viewed as at the very least negative and in many cases over the top. But
I mean,
that
he
opinion
still
was not
did
necessarily
do crazy
consistent.
stuff, but if you've got to do something crazy, like, yeah, I don't think, yeah, he didn't kill anyone. Like, I'll give him that for sure.
Didn't kill anyone. And I'll say he is a great lesson in why local elections are more important than federal ones.
Yeah, they directly affect your life. Yeah, for sure.
Because really, he had no other. Well, I mean, he could have just fucking figured out something else to do with his life, but
I mean, he had his life's work destroyed over like zoning board bullshit. Like they were doing stuff like turning off the water to his place and then fining him for not having a bathroom for the public to use after they shut off his water. Like they were really, really fucking with him.
Yeah.
And like they wouldn't make a road, so he's like, "Okay, I'll buy a bulldozer and I'll make a road." And they're like, "No, we're not going to let you. Don't solve your problems. You're supposed to be you're supposed to have your life ruined here, bud."
Yeah. Outside of the town. In nearby Grand Lake, where Marv actually lived, those who knew him were surprised that he had gone to these lengths, but ultimately sympathetic to his plight, and they were not the only ones. Across the country, Heemeyer rapidly achieved status as a martyr in anti-government circles. To these people, he was perceived as a hero who stood up against a corrupt system. His actions were seen not as attacks on innocent people, but as retribution against a corrupt town board that was conspiring against him. However, not everyone saw the situation in quite that same light, and it was in large part due to the work of Patrick Brower, who was the editor at Sky High News, the local Granby paper. Outside of the immediate reporting that was done by local journalists from the surrounding towns and counties,
the Sky King was another guy who kind of got like a cult following.
And their causes. If you look at the Wikipedia page for Heemeyer, for example, you'll see that essentially every single citation that deals with the lead up to that day is associated with Patrick Brower. What I mean by that is that they were either written by Brower himself, published in the newspaper that Brower edited, or they cite Brower. And along with covering the events in real time, Brower has also created 2 retrospective pieces on the incident. He published KillDozer, the true story of the Colorado bulldozer rampage in 2017, and he was a producer on the 2019 documentary Tread. The narrative stemming from Brower's more recent work is one of a sympathetic and well-liked, but ultimately isolated and paranoid man's wrath against perceived yet non-existent wrongs. One of the issues was related to Marv's sanitation solution, which was essentially just an old cement mixer buried in the ground and hooked up to a septic system. According to Brower, Marv refused to hook onto the sewer system for over a decade, even though the town ordinance required that he do so. And then, when they finally pushed the issue with him in 2002 and gave him a fine, he paid it with a check that was made out to the Cowards and Liars Department. Another issue had to do with zoning disputes, specifically the 2 lots adjacent to Heemeyer's property.
Yeah, paid to the order of a bunch of un-American pussies.
Property, Marv was offered $250,000, which he initially accepted. Then he supposedly jacked the price up to $375,000 when it was time to finalize the sale. And when the purchasers said, "Hey, we can't afford that," he just refused to negotiate any further. And then when they refused to pay, Heemeyer told them that he would fight their rezoning effort all the way to the end. Finally, Brower wrote on his website that the rumor that Marv was forced to shut down his business by the town board was false. According to Brower, he chose to shut down his business all on his own for no apparent reason other than that he wanted out so he could move forward with his plan to terrorize and bulldoze the town. Thing is, as I went to work trying to corroborate the various claims about the aspects of the KillDozer story, I found that a lot of them didn't quite line up. For example, there are several things on Brower's website that contradict his initial reporting. He'd also present things in a certain way in Tread, but I'd find that he'd either omitted or altered details. During this process, I came to realize that the narrative crafted by Brewer, whether he did it deliberately or not, did not seem to be accurate based on the available facts. Now, I can't speak to his motivation, or really that of anyone else involved in the legend of KillDozer, but what I can do is tell you everything that the media left out. And speaking of things being left out, sometimes there
I can speak to a lot of his motivation as a local media entity. Advertising through all the small businesses that were attacked by the KillDozer. So, yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Potentially local advertising. Potentially too, like, you don't necessarily want to side with the crazy guy, even if he was kind of right. Like, I understand people's motivation. I think you should be impartial, but, like, yeah, like, I don't know if you want your reputation to be affected by his legacy.
Yeah, that guy who just bulldozed the fucking town. That's my nigga.
Even though he's kind of like looked upon fondly by most people that talk about him, but yeah, he still did some crazy shit.
You actually want left out of a story, like your own personal story. So for that purpose, I want to introduce you to today's sponsor for this video, Aura. And to tell you about Aura, well, we've had some issues when basically any vacation and then 100 on damage is not insurance and leaves all you fly. Marvin John Heemeyer was born to South Dakota dairy farmers John and Augusta Heemeyer in 1951. He spent his youth in the Mount Rushmore state and then enlisted in the Air Force in 1971 at the age of 20. He first arrived in Colorado in 1974 when he was stationed at Lowry Air Force Base. Now, it's unclear what Heemeyer's military occupational specialty, or MOS, basically your job in the military. We're not really sure what that was. I don't have access to his records.
How?
And it's also unclear exactly when he got out of the military. But what we do know is that he stayed in Colorado, or returned to Colorado, where he went into the muffler repair business. And like I said, while I couldn't track down what his MOS was, that does suggest to me that he probably was involved in welding. By 1991, Marv was doing very well for himself and wanted to take some time off. So he leased out the business to another repairman by the name of Doug Brandstetter, so that he could take 6 months off, go get away, and, focus on his real passion, which was snowmobiling, and also snowmobile modification. Heemeyer decided that he would spend November of 1991 through May of 1992 in Grand Lake, Colorado, a small town with a population of just 170 people in 1990. Marv spent those 6 months in Grand Lake immersing himself in this small mountainside town culture, enjoying the lakeside views, the snowmobiling, and getting to know several people in town. It seemed he really enjoyed being up there, and that worked out because when it came time for that vacation to end, Doug Brandstetter was doing very well for himself down in Boulder and asked if he could extend his lease. Heemeyer obliged him and then made the choice to settle down in Grand Lake for a little while and just see what the area had to offer. He purchased a modest cabin property on Woodpecker Hill, a community on the north side of Grand Lake, in early 1992. I will tell you, trying to locate where Woodpecker Hill is in the town of Grand Lake took me 3 hours, and I'm still not confident I was right. It does appear that the town has undergone a rather significant amount of growth, at least structurally, since 1992. It's entirely possible that there are neighborhoods that existed in 1992 and also in 2004 that are just gone now. Because
sounds like the woodpecker got sturdy.
Case, it didn't really take Marv all that long to integrate fully into the community. One of the people who saw him most frequently was Lori Crane, the owner of a Polaris snowmobile store near his home. And according to her, Marv was a friendly and loyal customer who was in there bright and early every day during the winter to talk snowmobiles. And that made sense because Marv knew most of his friends in Grand Lake from snowmobiling. Specifically, he fell in with a group who called themselves the Thursday Club, and this was about 24 riders who would get together and go out snowmobiling on, as you might expect, Thursday. Stuart Spencer, who was a member of the Thursday Club, described Marv as his best friend and told the team behind the 2019 documentary Tread, "I looked at him as my bigger brother," and that I let Marv lead unless it was someplace I knew better than him. And as for how Marv handled social situations, Spencer was pretty clear.
That does look like fun.
He said that he never heard Marv talk bad about anybody but the people who did him bad. So Marv, not a gossip, not the kind of guy to just idly talk trash. And by all accounts, a pretty phenomenal snowmobiler. But Marv didn't just ride snowmobiles, he also worked on them. According to Thursday Club member Matt Reed, people would take their rigs to Marv, who would take stock steel and bend it custom to every machine, and he did this to form a bumper. And according to Spencer, these bumpers were so strong that a rider could plow through trees 4 to 5 inches thick. And according to Matt Reed, his work was so valued
that
you
cool.
weren't a snowmobiler in Grand Lake unless you had a Marv bumper. It's also clear from the comments of people that knew him that Marv wasn't only liked for his reliability as a customer or his skill as a welder. He was just genuinely a good guy. Reed, for example, joined the group when he was just 16, and according to him, Marv took him under his wing, helped teach him how to snowmobile and work on snowmobiles, and he went on to say that he was always a mentor and always helped, always gave. And according to a June 10th, 2004 article by a Tanya Bina at Sky High News, Thursday Club member Bruno Schroeder described Marv as the type of guy who would give you the shirt off his back. That same article cites another part owner of Lori Crane's snowmobile shop in Grand Lake, Alan Bender, as saying that Marv was very intuitive and that if he noticed you were having a bad day, he would find a way to cheer you up. And this positive opinion even extended to Grand Lake residents who didn't always agree with Marv. Former Grand Lake Mayor Gene Stover remarked that Heemeyer would have a smile on his face when he saw you, even if he didn't like you. During his time in Grand Lake, Marv was vocal in town politics, and on several occasions, he butted heads with the mayor on certain issues. But Stover told Sky High News that even though they butted heads on political issues, Heemeyer would still eat at his restaurant, the Lariat Saloon. And the Lariat Saloon is also where Heemeyer met his long-term girlfriend, Trisha McDonald. McDonald described Heemeyer as old school, a handshake's a handshake kind of guy, remarking that society doesn't allow that anymore. She went on to say, he was confident and I thought he was handsome.
A pure
He was
through
larger
and
than
through
life.
boomer.
I felt safe with him. He was wonderful to me. And it wasn't just Trisha McDonald who thought that Marv was a great guy. Glenn Trainor, who was undersheriff of Grand County during the incident in 2004, remarked that Marv had a great reputation in town and that he didn't ever meet anybody who disliked him. So you might wonder how it is that a man with that kind of reputation could go and do something like this. And the people of Grand Lake wondered about that too. After the incident on June 4th, 2004, former Mayor Stover told Sky High News, he was wound a little bit tight, but I never anticipated anything like this. Something pushed him off the edge. An unnamed member of the Thursday Club was quoted as saying, I knew he was not happy in Granby anymore. I heard about his problems with the town council. That same member also referred to the 6'2" tall Heemeyer as a gentle giant and said that he'd spoken to Marv just a month prior to what happened and got no indication that Marv had any plans to do something like this, that he had any plans to not be there after June 4th. The presiding mayor in Grand Lake in 2004, Judy Burke, was even sympathetic, telling Sky High News, I always thought he was okay. To think about somebody so alone, with no one to talk to the point that he had to do something like this. Of course, Marv knew a lot of people in Grand Lake, and he wasn't exactly the kind of guy to keep his opinions to himself, so many of them knew about the issues he was having in Granby, but most of them didn't realize precisely how affected Marv was. And while Granby's town board was quick to emphasize that Marv's retribution had put a lot of people in danger, specifically law enforcement and even children, Grand Lake Mayor Judy Burke pointed out that Marv seemed to have deliberately avoided putting any innocent people in danger. That same Sky High article quotes her as saying he didn't plan to hurt anyone, he had it planned so everyone saw him coming and could get out of the way in time. The only one he ended up hurting, besides financially, was himself. Still,
he wasn't exactly speeding in that thing.
A zoning dispute, a sewage issue, and a fine, right? So why did Marv feel that all of this was necessary? How did his perception of events differ so drastically that this decision made sense to him? Whatever you want to call a man like Marv Heemeyer, you would expect him to be the sort of man to leave behind a manifesto. And he did, just not in the typical format. Rather than committing his thoughts to paper, Marv recorded nearly 3 hours of monologues, describing in detail what led him to his decision, why it was justified.
Now these I listened to. Have you listened to these?
I've heard excerpts from them.
I
haven't heard the whole 3 hours, but I kind of would like to.
So they're fucking insane in the fact that he sounds like he's just straight having a conversation with himself. Like he's animated talking to himself. It's crazy.
And how it could have been prevented. Now, I could not find a full transcript of Marvin Heemeyer's tapes anywhere, so what I did was download the audio, find an AI transcription tool called TurboScribe, paid $120 for the annual subscription. No, this is not a sponsored segment, I'm just telling you what I did. Then I downloaded the text, and then I formatted it, edited out, there were certain parts where like the transcription software missed something he said, just edited it for clarity and for formatting, didn't take anything out, didn't change any words, just made sure it all fit. And then I used that and compared it to the narrative given in the media, but particularly by Brower in his books, his articles, and in the movie Tread. And if you would like to read that transcript yourself, you can do so by going onto our Patreon and subscribing for just $1 a month. We'll also be posting it for YouTube members. I'll also be uploading a copy of the notes I used for this video to the Patreon if you guys would like to check it out, and that one, of course, will also go to YouTube members. But anyway, according to Marv, the trouble all started with an acquaintance of his by the name of John Kleiner. Kleiner and Heemeyer knew each other through the repair business, and they would go snowmobiling together on occasion as well. Not long after Marv had made his move to Grand Lake permanent, John Kleiner approached him and said that he was looking to open a garage in the area. Marv looked around for a bit, and eventually he located a property at 723 County Road 612 in Granby. The attractive part of the lot was a 3,000 square foot warehouse equipped with 3 large bay doors, making it perfect for an auto shop. The property had fallen into the hands of the Resolution Trust Corporation after the former owner went bankrupt in the 1980s. And that's something I want to quickly explain. In the late 80s, a number of economic and regulatory factors led to a crash in the lending market that is typically known as the savings and loan crisis. During the course of the crisis, a number of savings and loan associations, which typically handle personal loans, mortgages, auto loans, things like that, nearly a third of these shut down across the United States. The closure of many banks in turn created a situation in which borrowers
It's almost
had
like
no
government
means of paying their
regulation
debt
is
as there was no
important.
bank to pay. Heemeyer suggested in his tapes that as a result of this situation, a number of people thought that their loans, their debt simply didn't exist anymore, and they went and they spent money that they should have been holding back for the loans. In reality, these loans had never been canceled or even formally paused, so when the FDIC came in and tried to rectify the situation and recover the debt, they wanted a lot of money that people didn't have. With many borrowers unable to pay this back debt, the banks went and foreclosed their properties, which ultimately went to auction. One of those properties was a concrete plant owned by Granby local Cody Dochev, and this concrete plant included the 3,000 square foot warehouse that Marvin wanted to buy. Heemeyer asked what the bank would sell it for pre-auction, but the $110,000 price tag attached to it was more than he was willing to pay. Heemeyer and Kleiner talked it over and decided that the most they were willing to spend was $66,000, and the plan was that Marv would purchase the property and then finance it to John. John would then operate the business and use part of the revenue to pay Marv back. Essentially, Marv was giving him a loan, but taking out the step of giving John the money first. Marv attended the auction, and when his chosen lot came up for bid, someone up front jumped up and immediately put down $35,000. That someone, as it turned out, was Cody Dochev. When he had lost the property, which he bought in 1972 during the savings and loan crisis of the late 80s, Dochev had been ruined financially, and a number of people
dude,
in
that
Granby
sucks.
lost
He's
their
just
jobs.
trying to get his
Cody
shit
had friends in
back.
high places, and one of those was former Granby Mayor Gus Harris. And Gus Harris had agreed to loan Dochev a certain amount of money to buy back his property. Heemeyer, of course, did not know any of this at the time. He says that when he found out that it was a foreclosure sale, he went and he talked to the realtor, Jeff Crane, and he asked, is the former owner going to try and buy the property back? And Crane said he didn't know and directed him to another realtor by the name of Peter Colley. Peter Colley was in the same boat. He didn't know if the former owner was going to try and buy the property back, which would imply then that the former owner, Cody Dochev, had not approached the realtors about purchasing the property back from the bank. So there was no way that Marv could have known when he got to the auction
okay.
that
So
he
it
would
was
be
a
bidding against the
surprise.
former owner. Unfortunately, he found himself doing precisely that. Heemeyer put down $40,000, then Dochev $45,000, and finally Heemeyer says he put down $50,000 and there was no counterbid from up front. Then, just after the auction, he says that Dochev approached him and just introduced himself, kind of, by just giving me a tongue lashing for about 10 minutes about, who I thought I was and what I was going to do with the property. Heemeyer did not take kindly to Dochev's attitude, but tried to explain the situation, which was that he had offered to buy the property for John Kleiner for $66,000, but since it had been Cody's property, and, he understood Cody's frustration, he offered to sell it to Cody for $66,000, the same price he was going to get from John. But the problem here was that Cody Dochev had not secured a loan for $66,000. Secured a loan for $50,000. Nonetheless, Marv wouldn't budge, not out of any sort of malice, but just because it was business. He was going to get $66,000 from one guy, why would he take $50,000 from another? But as I was cross-checking everything for this video, I realized that this portion of the narrative differs significantly from the one presented in Tread. Around 23 minutes into the documentary, Patrick Brower, the editor of Sky High News, the local Granby paper, plays a recording from an interview he did with Dochev. In the interview, Dochev says that he doesn't even think he met Marv that day, and that after the auction had ended, he and Gus just left. Brower then presses him and says, well, Marv said in his tapes that you guys talked that day. And once again, Dochev just denies it and says, no, we didn't get to talking. Brower then follows this up by saying that Gus Harris didn't have any recollection of the conversation either. Harris said that after the concrete bid, he and Cody sat there for another minute, but ultimately they just ended up leaving. He then went on to say, I don't know what Marv did, I wasn't paying attention to him really. We just got up and left, yeah. The contradiction is important on its own, but what really caught my eye was a claim made by Harris. Harris says that he and Cody had been friends for many years and had even gone to auctions together. But this time, he said that Cody had no party in the auction. He added that Cody would maybe be interested in the property at a future time, but there was no agreement or talk between us of him owning that property. That didn't sound right to me, and it was because of something that Patrick Brower said around 8 minutes and 50 seconds into the YouTube version of the documentary. Brower said that the Dochefs were looking for land upon which to put this concrete operation with an indoor batch plant. Additionally, he said, Dochef also showed up with Gus Harris. It's not mentioned that Cody once owned that concrete plant, which is an omission that is notable but could have been accidental. Or at least on my first watch through Tread, I thought, all right, well, that could have been an accident. And while this doesn't necessarily translate to Gus Harris was there to buy land for Cody Dochef, it made me suspicious enough to dig. As it turns out, Patrick Brower was a hell of a lot more straightforward in his initial reporting. In a June 17, 2004 article, Brower wrote the following. The story of Marv's relationship with the Dochef family started when Heemeyer bought the 2-acre parcel for his mountain muffler business in 1992. The land was bought at auction from the Resolution Trust Corporation, which administers the holding of failed banks. The Dochefs had owned the property but lost it to the bank after previous business plans for the area failed. When the land went to auction, a friend and business associate of the Dochefs had hoped to buy the property so that he could sell it back to the Dochefs at a later time. Cody Dochef had wanted to own land in that area in western Granby because his concrete batch plant operation was being operated on land that he was leasing from the Thompson family, located on a mesa north of the current batch plant. Dochef wanted his plant to be on land he owned. The purchase of the land by the friend to be sold back to the Dochefs would have started that process, but a man named Marv Heemeyer showed up at the auction and outbid Harris, buying the 2-acre parcel for $42,000. While it's worth noting that Marv had the numbers wrong, he said that he bought it for $50,000 when in reality it was $42,000, the vastly more important piece is that Brower's earlier journalism, taken from interviews with the Dochefs themselves, directly contradicts Harris's claim that Cody wasn't a party to the bid. I mean, technically, Gus Harris didn't lie. He said that Cody wasn't a party to the bid, which means that Cody was not bidding that day. He was not putting in any of his own money that day. It doesn't mean there wasn't an agreement between Gus Harris and Cody Dochef for Gus to buy the property at auction and Cody to pay him back later. Essentially, he was being factual but not truthful. And that's where I began to wonder if the omission of the fact that Cody once owned the plant earlier in the documentary was not an accident, but rather a deliberate narrative choice. But in any case, Marv had a problem. While at the auction, it was revealed that the EPA had placed an audit on the property due to some oil spills, and the cleanup that they recommended would have cost $20,000. When John Kleiner learned of this after the sale was finalized, he got cold feet and told Heemeyer he no longer wanted the property. And Marv, being the kind of guy to take a man at his word, hadn't really required a formal contract or even a deposit for the property, which meant that John Kleiner was in no way legally obligated to pay him back. And this left Marv as the owner of a property that he didn't even want, which was also under an EPA audit, the cleanup for which the FDIC and then the Resolution Trust Company had done a good amount of the cleanup themselves, so it wasn't going to be nearly as expensive, but still not the ideal situation to be in. So, making the most of this poor situation, Marvin spent the summer of 1992 trying to get the property cleaned up so that he could figure out what he was going to do with it. And it was during that summer that Heemeyer met Bud Wilson, who was the superintendent of the Granby Sanitation and Water Department.
It's a shame he didn't meet Bud Dwyer with the government.
According to Marv, Wilson came to him during the summer and asked him to hook onto the town's sewer system. And Marv, being on the old rudimentary improvised septic tank that Dochef had installed on the property earlier, he just kind of went along with it. He said, yeah, sure, what do I need to do? Do I need an attorney? Let's make it happen. And Wilson said, no attorney. In fact, I'll do all the paperwork. I will get everything in order for you. When you show up to the meeting, all you got to do is sign and pay the fee. Heemeyer was all for it. It wasn't going to cost him a ton of money, and it was going to make his life a little bit easier. But when he got to the meeting, he was surprised to find that when Wilson said he'd get it all taken care of, he hadn't gotten it all taken care of. At the meeting, the board told Marvin Heemeyer that he needed to get a maintenance easement from his neighbor. And a maintenance easement is essentially formal written consent for the town's staff, their sewer people, to come and install and then maintain a sewer line on private property. This was necessary because the sewer main did not actually run adjacent to Marv's property at any point. So the nearest place that they could hook Marv onto the sewer system was across the property directly south of him, and that property was owned by Gus Harris. Marv said in his tapes that the maintenance easement thing upset him because he had been told that this would all be taken care of. And he also says that Bud Wilson and Gus Harris were good friends, so, this just really all rubbed him the wrong way. It upset him so much, in fact, that he decided, you know what, screw it, I'm not going to hook onto the sewer system anyway, I'm just going to keep using the septic tank, it's legal, it's not causing any problems for me, I'm just not going to deal with this. But Marv's response, even just looking at his own account, doesn't really seem to make sense. But there might be some further context to consider here. First of all, it seems like Marv had two options. He could either get the maintenance easement from Gus Harris, or he could pay out of pocket to add a connection to the sewer main at the next nearest point. If he took this route, then the town would install the new sewer line under the road adjacent to his property that led out to the highway. Thing is, that was a considerable distance, and it was going to cost between $60,000 and $80,000. Considering that he only paid $42,000 for the property in the first place, and that there was no ordinance that required him to connect to the sewer system in order to continue operating his business, he didn't see the value in that option. The other possibility of the easement would seem less complicated, but there may be more to Marv's reaction than just irritation with bureaucracy. And this is actually something that does come up in Tread. In 1992, Ron Thompson was VP of the Sanitation District, and he
Look
was
at
one
the
of the
neck
leaders
on
of the
that
meeting
dude.
night.
Yeah.
And the Thompsons are, as Brower puts it, a Granby legacy family, a wealthy working family making their money off excavation, but also off of the fact that they owned a lot of land just because they'd been here forever. It should also be mentioned that in addition to Ron Thompson being vice president of the sanitation board, his father Dick Thompson was mayor of the town. As for Ron, Patrick Brower described him as pretty outspoken in the board meetings and suggested he may have said some things that upset Marv at that meeting. Perhaps most consequentially, he also implies that Thompson may have taken a leadership role in making the decisions they made. When it came to this event within this series of events that led to June 4th, 2004, there's no more information. That's it. That's all we get is Marv says, they told me I needed the maintenance easement, and
Alien
then
worm.
they wouldn't give me the
Fucking
maintenance easement.
Edgar
Based
from
on Marv's
Men in
tapes,
Black.
it starts to seem like he wasn't told, you need to go get this easement, but he was told, you can't have this easement. If you look closely at Marv's accounting of events and then at Brower's commentary, it does seem like maybe this was just a misunderstanding. Marv says that he was told Gus Harris would not give the town an easement, and that unless he got the easement, he was never getting connected to the sewer. It may be that what Thompson was trying to express was, hey Marv, we're happy to link you up to the sewer, but the town actually can't go get the easement. You have to do that. You have to go get it from Harris. The town can't get the easement. And it may be that Marv interpreted this as meaning Harris won't grant the easement. The way it's kind of framed in Brower's accounting of events, it seems like Marv was just annoyed that he had another step that he had to go do and decided, well, instead of doing homework, I'm gonna, just go and keep operating my business as usual. I don't need to be attached to the sewer. It doesn't do anything for me, and there's no ordinance against me not being on it. Alternatively, if we look at what Brower said about Thompson, which is that he may have said some things that upset Marv at that meeting, then it's not really a jump to suggest that Heemeyer said, well, I was told all of this was going to be taken care of. What do you mean I need to go get an easement? You guys asked me to hook onto the sewer. You told me you would do everything. I just had to sign. Like, what's going on? What gives? Then it could be that, maybe Thompson...
It's never
really
that
liked
simple.
being talked back to.
Yeah.
It turned into an argument, and suddenly we've blown past the misunderstanding, and now we're into the territory of two more like alpha male types who are trying to assert their dominance. But you would think that at some point, if that's what was going on, cooler heads would have prevailed, that somebody would have talked one or both of the men down. If not that day, then, maybe Bud Wilson, who was on good terms with everybody, could have gone to Heemeyer and said, hey man, I'm sorry about this, I'll set up the meeting between you and Harris, you can go get the easement, we'll be good to go. You would think that would have happened. And the fact that it didn't left me open to the possibility that maybe there was more to this. While Heemeyer never explicitly connects this to the issue of the sewer hookup, he does explain that 2 months after he bought the property, he had bought it in April of 1992, so in June of 1992, he had approached Gus Harris with an offer to buy the 2 acres south of what would become Mountain View Muffler. Harris said he'd be willing to sell for $17,500, and Heemeyer said he'd think about it, but at the time he felt he was financially spread too thin and didn't go for it. But then he says, less than a year later, he decided he was going to buy the property, and he goes to Harris and he says, hey, I'd like to buy it. Is the $17,500 offer still on the table? And he says that Harris said, no, actually now it's going up to $20,000. Heemeyer
That
was
would
not
make
a
sense.
fan of this. He felt it was a little underhanded. Nothing about the property had changed. But
A
said,
year
"You know what,
had
fine,
changed."
I'll take it. And then something a little weird happened.
That's
Every
what
time
changed.
Marv tried to formalize this sale, Harris was nowhere to be found. He kept getting out of it. He couldn't sign the paperwork. He wasn't home. Just couldn't do it. Marv says he even went to Harris's wife and said, "Hey, can you help me organize this so we can get this deal done?" And eventually, he just had to let it go, according to Marv, because he didn't want to push. He didn't want to. He just got here. He did not want to cause problems in a small town where he was the newcomer. So, from what he said, he was like, "All right, well, you know what? I don't need the land. It's easier for me to just let this go now and not piss anybody off." But that whole episode made me wonder if perhaps what happened here is that Marv was told by Bud Wilson, "Hey, I'll handle everything. All you need to do is sign and pay." Marv Heemeyer says, all right, cool, goes to the meeting, and then when it comes time to sign and pay, he's told, hey, you also need this maintenance easement. And he goes, what do you mean I need a maintenance easement? You guys told me you were handling all the paperwork. And the town maybe then tells him, well, yeah, all the paperwork we could, but maybe Bud Wilson forgot to mention you also needed to go to Harris yourself because we can't do that. And if you put yourself into Marv's shoes, what he was just told was,
Left out
hey,
those
buddy,
key
in
details.
order to hook yourself up to the sewer, you're going to need to go get a maintenance easement from a guy who's been dodging you for 3 months. And if you've ever dealt with any level of government, you probably know how painful the process is and how the entire time all you want to do is be done with it. And Marv was already a little bit on the anti-government side, He had expressed to people that he wasn't a huge fan of bureaucracy. So, with all of that in mind, you can imagine how standing there, he might go, you know what, screw this, I'm out, I'm just not gonna do this, and leave. And I should say that looking through Marv's tapes, reading through them, I don't get the sense that at this point in time, he felt that he was being targeted in any sort of organized way, but just that he was kind of being given the runaround because he was from out of town. And he also thought that maybe this was kind of retribution for him buying the property out from under Cody, that now they were going to make him go and pay a lot of money to connect himself to the sewer line. But if Heemeyer thought that he had washed his hands of this whole situation, that was not exactly the case. You see, when Bud Wilson filed that paperwork for him, what he was doing was filing a formal request to join the city's sanitation district, which meant that he was putting himself under their ordinances. After Marv stormed out of the meeting and said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore, whatever, forget about it, I'll just stick with my septic system, he never filed a withdrawal of that request. And that meant that at any time, so long as Heemeyer remained unconnected to the sewer system, the town could come to him and find him in contempt of ordinance. And if they did, they could fine him or go so far as to tell him to close down his business.
Yeah, that's Jewish.
Yeah, bureaucracy.
Taking
That's
stock of the
just
situation,
wonderful.
Marv
Definitely
decided
in the
that
spirit
best
of the
course
law.
action was to let Doug Brandstetter keep running the shop down in Boulder, while he himself would start to try and build up a business in Granby. He named his new operation Mountain View Muffler
Bunch
and
of
began
bastard,
taking clients in
man.
early 1993. From there, he quickly built up a reputation of being, in the words of then Undersheriff of Grand County Glenn Traynor, the best welder around. Casey Farrell, the owner of Gamble's Appliances and a town board member from 1997 to...
You haven't formally told us to go fuck ourselves, so we haven't fucked ourselves yet.
Yeah.
1999,
Yeah, we reserve the right
also
to
used
just
to Marv
bullshit
for his
you
repairs and
completely.
his welds. He recalled one instance where the box on a delivery truck of his kept bouncing up and down.
Bunch
while they
of
drove
rat
it. He says that he took
bastards.
it to Marv, and Marv very quickly welded it, fixed it, and the truck never needed another repair for that system ever again. And a friend of Marv's by the name of Pete Mitchell even said that he could swap a muffler out entirely in 20 minutes. He described it as Marv having no wasted movements. It was like a fluid start to finish. He did everything perfectly. By 1994, Marv felt that things were going well enough that he could invest, he could expand his business. And the way he planned to do that was by building a boat storage warehouse on the property. The plan was that he would then lease this out to locals to pay for its construction, and by the time he was ready to retire, it would be just a nice little bit of retirement income. He had a 50-foot by 120-foot warehouse designed, which would hold 3 2,000 square foot storage units. And each of these units would be accessible by a private personnel door as well as a bay door. And because he knew that he was in a bit of a weird situation with the sewer system, he made sure to keep Bud Wilson appraised of everything that was going on. And Bud did tell him throughout the process and over the next couple of years, hey man, you're eventually gonna need to hook onto the sewer system. It will eventually happen. But it never did. So Marv just kind of kept on keeping on. At the time, everybody in town was coming to him for repairs. He wasn't really causing any trouble. So, he figured, well, what do I have to worry about? It's not like they have any reason to come crack down on me, and I'm not hurting anybody. In any case, the building was finished by the fall of 1994, and by the end of the next year, he had all 3 units leased out. And that was a good thing, because while this shop was doing decently well and bringing in a good passive income, the shop in Boulder wasn't going too hot. Doug Brandstetter was having issues, so he decided that he would go find himself a new Doug. And I mean that literally. He went and found another guy named Doug Davis. And because Doug 1.0 had been struggling to make payments towards the end of his lease, he gave Doug 2.0 a slightly better deal, hoping that he wouldn't have to find a new person to run the shop, at least not soon. For a while, things just kind of went along. Mountain View Muffler was making a steady profit, the shop in Boulder was doing well, and nobody was bugging him about the sewer connection. And things looked like they might get even better when in 1997, Cody Dochev approached Marv with an offer to buy the property. Dochev had just purchased the 2 acres south of Marv's shop from Gus Harris, and now he wanted to expand into the land he had formerly owned. Marv said, sure, let's talk about it, and had an appraiser come down from Grand Lake who valued the property at $270,000. As a sign of goodwill, Marv offered the property to Cody for $250,000, cutting $20,000 off the appraised value. He then gave Cody a copy of the appraisal and waited for the man to come back with a counteroffer. But Cody never did. And here we encounter another place where the version of events given in the documentary Tread diverges from that given by Heemeyer. According to Dick Brody, a town board member from 1995 to 2001...
anyone who looks like this, with the sideburn strap...
Yeah, that dude has a racist facial hair setup. Like, that dude probably said the N-word today.
Cody agreed to pay the $250,000, and then immediately afterwards, Marv jumped the price up to $375,000. Dick then says that Cody agreed to pay the higher number, and then Marv just kind of backed out. There are also some other accounts that go so far as to say that Marv hiked the price up yet again to $450,000, but that's not exactly accurate, and we'll get there. Actually, you know what? It's not that far in the future. I'll tell you this. He put it up for auction at one point and started the bidding at $450,000. He didn't tell Cody Dochev, all right, well, now that you've agreed to $375, it's $450. No. Years later, he put it up for auction at $450. But going back to the story at hand here, to make matters more confusing, Patrick Brower's 2004 reporting once again differs from what is said in Tread. According to Brower, the price change only occurred 2 years later, after the Dochefs had requested a zoning change to the property. Heemeyer's tapes corroborate this, which means that this was not immediately like Brody had said. This was years between these offers. And it should also be considered that, as Brower knows,
I don't know if we need a DSP 2.0. I think there's quite enough of that fucking guy to go around.
Yeah.
There's also another difference in Brower's 2004 recounting of events, which is that it was Joe Dochev, not Cody, who approached Marv about buying the land. Now, I tried to track down who Joe would be, and things rather quickly got weird. I was able to find a Cody Dochev associated with a Joe Dochev, as well as a Susie Dochev. And Cody Dochev was married to a Susie. But as for Cody Dochev, his real name wasn't Cody, it was Metro. Metro and his wife Susie had a daughter named Brenda Lee who died in 2003. And in Brenda Lee's obituary, it lists Metro and Susie as parents, and then it also lists Frank, Charlie, and Joe as siblings. As for grandparents, it lists a Metro and a Helen. Now I wanted to do some more digging to make
Metro
sure
is a cool name.
Families with at least 2 matching names in the state of Colorado, which was unlikely but possible. And what I eventually found was that this Metro, this Cody guy, was one
Metro
of 4
booming,
children, a Metro Senior and a Helen Dochev. Their other children were named Jim, Theodora, and Elaine. So this confirmed that yes, this Joe is Cody/Metro's son, but then, I'm a little nosy, I want to do some more digging. So I tracked down Jim Dochev, who runs a dairy farm in Colorado as well, with his wife Judy and their 5 sons. John, Joe, Jim Jr., Justin, and
I like
Jay.
how this guy is wearing the same fucking outfit.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's his work clothes.
Both Cody and his brother
And his church
Jim
clothes.
have sons named Joe. And of course, I initially assumed that something was miswritten. Somebody misrecorded something at some point here, right? And so, what I went then and did is I found Metro Senior's obituary, where amongst his grandsons, it lists 2 different Joes. Anyway, that's not necessarily relevant to everything that happened here, but I just thought it was interesting and I would share it. I was tracking down a lead when I found all of that out, which was that I was trying to figure out where the hell Cody Dochev actually came from, because in the documentary, they almost make it sound like he was some poor Bulgarian immigrant when he got to Granby. As I was looking through it, I was like, I'm not sure, I'm not sure if this was a deliberate misdirection of some kind or not, so I decided not to include the full segment. But to give you an idea of what my thought process was here, they refer to him as being a little Bulgarian and, saying he was quick, that he was a good man. And then they also, the Thompson brothers say, he came here with next to nothing and he's worked really hard to get where he is. And I was like, at first, when I first listened to it, I was like, could this be them trying to make it seem like Cody Dochev was, I don't know the right term, but like make it seem like he was, less prominent, less powerful than he actually was, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But at the end of the day, I couldn't tell if it was some kind of deliberate misdirection, as I said, or if this was, just kind of a weird way of describing somebody. Like, the reason I was trying to do this is because I was trying to establish if the Thompsons were reliable. I knew Harris wasn't, so I was trying to establish if the Thompsons were reliable witnesses, I guess. Anyway, ultimately, it does not matter whether it was Joe or Cody who was trying to do the negotiations. What matters is that Marv did not raise the price immediately, nor without reason. He only raised the price after discovering that the town was going to rezone the property for the Dochefs, and he wanted to be fairly compensated. The zoning, however, was an issue all its own. After Marvin Heemeyer initially agreed to sell his property to the Dochefs for $250,000, they did not immediately go draft up a contract and start formalizing the sale. Instead, they went to the town and asked for permission to build an indoor concrete plant. And while Brower's 2004 article frames this as something akin to just going and asking for a permit, it was actually a lot more complicated than that. Neither Marv's property nor the 2 acres adjacent to it were properly zoned
it can never
for what
be
the Dochefs
easy.
were trying to do. And this meant that the town would have to rezone the
Dealing
area
with
in order for
government
them to
permit
build
bullshit, like,
now, it's
never
not
gonna be
typical
easy.
to rezone such small amounts of acreage. You usually don't see 4 acres rezoned. Rather than forcing Dochev to go through the proper channels or find an area that was already
Wait,
zoned
what did
for
he
this
say?
kind of use,
Hold on.
small amounts of acreage. Now, it's not typical to rezone such small amounts of acreage. You usually don't see 4 acres rezoned. Rather than forcing Dochev to go through the proper channels or find an area that was already zoned,
I don't know where he's getting that,
the
but
town
okay.
of Granby offered him the ability to submit a
I served
request
on a
for
zoning board,
PDO.
so
A PDO is a planned overlay
I might know a
district,
thing or two
and
about these
what this
Jews.
meant was that they could rezone that small area without having to submit a request to rezone the entire part of town. In doing this, the town was already giving Dochev a little bit of special treatment, because zoning's really not supposed to work that way. But according to the Dochef's version of events, after they found out that it was going to be rezoned for them, they just needed to go through the hearing process. They went to Marv and they said, hey, we'd like to buy the property, and that is when he raised the price to $375,000. Of course, in Heemeyer's account, he went and got the property appraised first. This was not out of nowhere. The Dochefs told Marv, you know what, that's too steep, we can't do that, and they went back to the drawing board. And as they were working out the plan to buy Marv's property, the Dochefs also were in negotiations to buy the 22 acres just west of it. This subdivision was zoned for business, and they would also be asking the town to rezone for light industrial use there. I also will say that the finer details of how the zoning laws work are a little bit unclear to me, but from what I understand, what was going on here was sketchy. Once the Dochefs had that 22-acre subdivision,
I mean, it's local government. It's it's sketchy. That's all local government is corruption and sketchy.
$375,000 for your property.
That's why they're important.
Give you 2 acres with highway frontage, so that's better access than you currently have, and you'll give us the 2 acres that you have. And as they told this story, Marv was at first receptive to this, but then, said, actually, I want you to build me a building on the property too. The Dochefs balked at this, with Joe telling Patrick Brower to give him that land with a huge building. It would have cost near $1 million. It didn't make sense. In addition, Marv wanted a contract laying out all of these terms and guaranteeing that he would get both the building and the land. Susie Dochef then told him that because they didn't have the permit yet, and they also technically hadn't purchased the property, they couldn't give him that contract. The way it's phrased and framed in the article, Marv comes across as being greedy and unreasonable. But when you break it down, that's really not the case. If we look at the price change, the Dochefs were negotiating with Heemeyer based on the value of the property as it was zoned at the time. But when they initiated the zoning process, Marv knew that a success would mean a significant shift in the property value. He did the correct thing and went and got it appraised given the new zoning, and then presented that appraisal price to the Dochefs. His reaction to the proposed land swap wasn't unreasonable either, considering that Marv would be giving up 2 acres of developed land with 2 buildings in exchange for 2 acres of undeveloped land. There's also a pretty significant irony in Joe's assessment that this didn't make sense, because giving him 2 acres and a building would have cost near $1 million, given that he was unwilling to pay even $400,000 for 2 acres and a building. Finally, there's nothing irrational about Marv asking for a contract guaranteeing the terms of the land swap. That's just how business deals work. It should also be noted that Marv's concerns were not limited to proper compensation. He genuinely did not want to have his business downwind of a concrete plant. And if they were going to build the concrete plant anyway, then he didn't want to be stuck there. From his perspective, this could all just be a ruse to keep him from opposing the rezoning. And then, when it was too late, the Dochefs could just back out and say, hey, sorry, there was never a formal contract. Marv's concern here was that he could end up being left with a very dusty, lower value property than what he had under the current zoning laws. For that reason, he was well within his rights to want assurances. Ultimately, the Dochefs were unwilling to give him anything in writing, so Marv told them that he was going to oppose the rezoning and the concrete plant all the way to the end. According to Joe Dochef, from that point on, Marv was not negotiable to anything. We could have given him the whole subdivision and he wouldn't have gone for it. At the same time, notices about the rezoning, which was going to require several public hearings per the town's bylaws, were beginning to show up at Marv's door. This prompted him to head down to the town hall to ask about any building permits for the property next door. What he received was a copy of a permit for a water storage tank, which was issued at a fee of $5,000. I'm not particularly familiar with building permits, but that sounds high. According to a Grant County document designed for estimating building fees, that's the kind of money that you would pay to get a permit on a structure valued at over $1 million in 2024. Marv also noticed that the permit had a rather interesting cover letter, which stated that the water tank was in no way related to the as of yet unapproved PDO. In his mind, the only reason to clarify that would be because it was related to the PDO. It could be possible that the water tank would be useful to the Dochefs, concrete plant or not, but the way Marv was seeing it, they were starting to build every piece of their concrete plant that didn't require rezoning. Now, as I said, because zoning is a matter of public interest, the town bylaws required that they have several hearings so people could attend, voice their concerns, and then they could deliberate. And in every single case, those hearings were opposed, with the opposition led by Marvin Heemeyer. Marv was not the only person in town opposed to the concrete plant, but as one of the people who would be most affected by it, he sort of undertook a leadership role. He cited the excess noise, the dust, the traffic, and most importantly, the effects on air and water quality. These were concerns common to many of the residents of Granby, and Casey Farrell, who was serving on the board at the time, said that he thinks that Marv's objections even helped the town. Cody, on the other hand, at each meeting, made promises that he would find a way to mitigate all of their concerns, and slowly but surely, whether because people just kind of were becoming okay with it, or because of the influence of the board, the number of people opposing dwindled further and further. And at that point, it seemed like things were going to go Cody Dochef's way. But then, Marvin Heemeyer showed up with a lawyer by the name of Dietz, and the board kicked everyone out of the session so that they could have their own private little conversation. When they finished, they decided to restart the whole process, according to Brower, because as the Town Planning Commission and Board of Trustees moved the Dochef's request along, the town board discovered it had made a mistake in its approval process. This is small town government code for we were trying to do something shady and then we got caught. As far as Dietz was concerned, at least in Heemeyer's recollection, this was an open and shut case. The result of this move was a delay in the approval process, during which time the Dochefs continued to prepare for the construction of their batch plant, completing the foundation by early fall of 2000. It was at this point that Heemeyer, acting on the advice of Dietz, launched a lawsuit against the town at the end of the year. While the lawsuit was sitting up in district court,
that's a funny
the town
fucking...
actually just kind of kept moving things along, figuring that
Yeah,
Marv
my
Heemeyer
lawyer
would lose the
Dietz.
lawsuit. In fact, they were so confident
You'll
that
get
they did
Dietz
yet
on it.
another thing that was against the rules, which was change the final meeting where they were supposed to vote on whether or not the rezoning would go through to a preliminary planning meeting for the concrete plan. With that, the preliminary plans were approved in January of 2001, and the actual final approval for the rezoning was granted in April of that year. But of course, because the preliminary plans had already been approved, that was just kind of a formality. And the reason that all of this was able to happen is because Heemeyer was not able to get an injunction against the Dochefs. The case was in court, but they would not stop them from moving forward with the construction. And this is actually typical when it comes to rezoning, because by this point, a lot of people have been paid for things. Stopping the construction is going to cause more problems than it's going to solve. So what they do is they just say, once it's finished, in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, is, yeah, the building can be there, you just can't use it for that purpose. At this point, with all other options exhausted, Marv Heemeyer's only hope was the courts. Despite losing his battle in the town hall, Heemeyer had yet to be defeated in the courts, and the legal fees were, not exactly great for the Dochefs or the town. The Dochefs claim that wanting to just get all of this over and done with, resolve the issue, and move along with everything, they approached Marv in June of 2001 and gave him an offer. They told him that if he were to drop the lawsuit, they would give him the easement so he could finally connect to the sewer line. Marv hung up without an answer, and to be perfectly honest, I don't blame him for that reaction. This is presented as some kind of generous or at the very least reasonable compromise to the conflict, but if you look at it more closely, it's kind of absurd. It's hard to say for certain exactly what it was that happened in 1992 that kept Marv off of the sewer system. Like I said, there's a few different possibilities that range from it being a misunderstanding to it being a deliberate act, but Marv is adamant that he was stonewalled. Interestingly, Tread makes no mention of the dispute with Harris, which, as far as Marv is concerned, seems to have been the inciting incident. Instead, they only mention the option of him paying around $80,000 to set up a line that didn't cross anyone else's private property. And yet they do mention that the easement was an option later on in 2001, when the Dochefs went to say to him, hey, if you drop the lawsuit, we'll give you your easement. It's a little hard to explain, but in Tread, there's kind of a bait and switch with this situation. Because they tell you that in 1992, Marv needed this easement. And building off of that, they tell you that the other option was Marv could pay like $80,000 to construct his own sewer line out to the sewer main without crossing any private land. But then they talk about him needing an easement from the Dochefs, not Harris. And what they kind of do there is they conflate the later dispute with that original sewer line dispute. If you combine Marv's insistence that he was straight up denied access to the sewer line in 1992 with what appears to be the deliberate omission of the involvement of Harris, it makes me wonder what else may have been left out of the story. Marv was curious about that too, so he went down to the town hall and requested the meeting minutes from that 1992 sanitation department meeting. And he says in the tapes that when he read through them, there was not a single mention of the maintenance easement. In his recollection, they had spent at least 15 minutes debating this at that meeting, and yet the secretary just didn't record it, or possibly it had been struck from the record. Now, of course, the official record as it stands is going to show that it wasn't discussed, that they didn't mention a maintenance easement. Marv is saying they did. It's kind of hearsay. It's he said, she said. But taking all of that into account, what the Dochefs were essentially saying to Marv was, if you bend the knee, I'll give you something I had no right to keep from you in the first place. Marv continued to hold out, but the blows kept coming, and in April of 2002, he lost the lawsuit. At this point, Marv was, for all intents and purposes, trapped. The Dochefs refused to give him an easement, he couldn't connect to the sewer system otherwise without shelling out tens of thousands of dollars for the new connection, and beginning in the summer of 2002, the town started fining him for every single day he wouldn't connect. So Marv did what any man in his situation would do. He bought a bulldozer. Specifically, he bought a Komatsu D355A, which is an absolute beast of a machine that I am sure Whistling Diesel can explain better than I can. So, if you're
I
watching
can
this
only
video,
imagine
the day it
like
came out,
how
this video
much
might
the
not be
stock
out yet, but if you're
value
watching
of
this video a week
Komatsu
after
went
it
up
came out,
after
it
this.
should be. Marv ultimately decided to shut down the business.
Yeah,
at the
that
end of
fucking thing can
2002,
bulldoze.
putting his equipment as well as the property itself up for auction, and then he just let Jesus take the wheel. And that's not an exaggeration, as we're about to see. At the auction, everything sold with the exception of the property itself and the bulldozer. And Marv took this as a sign from God. His work in Granby was not finished, and it involved the Komatsu. Having sold everything related to the business except for the buildings, he then chose to lease out the property to a trash company. I think it's actually called The Trash Company. It was around this time that Marv also
Totally
discovered
not
that
some money
the
laundering
dozer
scheme.
fit perfectly through the doors of his garage. And when I say perfectly, I mean like within 2 inches of clearance on either side. And he took this as yet another sign from God that he was supposed to have that bulldozer out of sight. And then Marv just took the winter of 2002 into 2003 off.
Funny how
He
mysterious
spent it
God works.
snowmobiling, hanging out with friends, just enjoying life as it came to him. And when the warm weather returned and his snowmobiling was finished, he headed on back down to Granby, where he built himself a little residential area inside of that garage. Beginning in the summer of 2003, Marv Heemeyer started adding things to his Komatsu. And when I say things, what I mean is that he created armor by welding half-inch thick steel plates together into a hollow box, and then filling that box with, ironically, concrete. Within the armor structure,
Oh God,
he
is
embedded video
absolutely
cameras,
a
the
shit
lenses of which were
poster.
protected by 3-inch thick bulletproof plastic shields. And pointing through a small hole in the back of the cabin, he mounted a .50 caliber rifle. Day in and day out, literally living inside of his workshop, Marv Heemeyer crafted a homemade tank. It was during this period, when he was locked inside of that garage most of the time, that his belief in a divine mission began to take shape. In October of 2003, he sold the property to the trash company for $400,000, and then leased out one of the garage bays for what he told them was an unfinished project. As part of this process, the owner, Travis Busey, had to get every
Where's the
building
lie?
insured, which meant a walkthrough with the insurance company. Marv covered the half-finished dozer with a large tarp, told a little lie about what was under it, and then both Busey and the insurance adjuster just kind of walked on without asking any questions. And it was things like this that Marv took as signs that God was telling him to keep
This is
going.
God's plan.
One of those supposed signs was that
Yeah.
despite locking himself into that garage for hours or even days on end and refusing to tell anybody exactly what he was working on, nobody caught him. Interestingly, one article quotes local gun store owner Sean Nelson as saying, "People knew he was building the armored bulldozer, but they didn't know why he was building it after the events of June 4th. Some people say that they specifically didn't know that he was doing it, and then others say that nobody knew that he was doing it, but it appears Sean Nelson did. And the list continued
This
when
guy
he
knew.
thought about it, because about a year prior, he and Trisha had broken up. She had picked up smoking again, and Marv was not happy about it. They got into a fight and ultimately decided to stop seeing each other. To Marv, this was just another sign, as he realized that he had never been married. He had never had a family of his own. So, if he were to go, nobody would be harmed. He wouldn't be leaving anybody without a provider. But that didn't mean that nobody would be there to miss him. Marv was not depressed, and he knew that he would be mourned. So, Marv took steps to ensure that his father and siblings...
What a based king. Yo, that fucking bitch, she started smoking cigarettes again. Fuck you, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And then he goes and fucking lights up his oxyacetylene torch, breathing
Yep.
all those fumes.
He's like, I'm gonna go work on my fucking bulldozer.
Yeah.
provided for by selling all
I'll
of
be
his
in the
possessions
garage. Don't
and then
come out
transferring
there.
all liquid wealth to his father. In turn, John Heemeyer willed all of that wealth to his other 3 children. When Marv's father passed away on March 31st of 2004, all of Marv's money was then transferred to his siblings from his father. Now, some believe that the death of the elder Heemeyer was a breaking point for Marv.
Papa
That after
Heemeyer.
the death of his father, he felt he had nothing left to live for. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems that he had settled on this course of action long beforehand. And I say that because Marv's unorthodox estate management had the secondary effect of screwing Heemeyer's targets out of any recuperation. Because he had given up everything he owned prior to causing any damage to anybody's property, and then that money had not just been transferred once, but twice, and the second time through a will, there was no way that anybody was getting their hands on it. And because
Nice.
his siblings couldn't be held responsible for his actions, nothing of the $1 million+ that he had made off of selling what he owned would go to his enemies. And
Excellent.
finally, Marv wasn't offered the opportunity to extend his lease past June of 2004. It wasn't any sort of malicious thing. It wasn't that he was being a bad tenant. It was just that the trash company needed the space for their own business. To Marv Heemeyer, that was as clear a sign as any.
Time's up.
Just after 2 p.m. on Friday, June 4th, 2004, Marvin Heemeyer's modified Komatsu D355A began its path of destruction. The first stop was Cody Dochev, the man that Marv felt was most responsible for his woes. There was a brief skirmish as the dozer attacked the first target, which was the concrete plant. Gunfire was exchanged, and at one point, Marv rolled the bulldozer through a barrier behind which there were 3 police officers hiding. All 3 managed to get out of the way in time, but many people pointed out that had they not moved, they would have been killed. That said, it should also be considered that Marv was driving approximately 3 miles per hour. Once satisfied with the damage,
Or
Marv
he might have
rides
not
afterwards
even known
onto
they were
Highway
there,
40,
too.
which is known as Agate Avenue as it runs through Granby. Also, if by some miracle you are a Granby local watching this video and I pronounced that wrong, I am begging you give me the correct pronunciation. I'm not intending to offend. I really would like to know how to pronounce the word. Anyway, as he headed east on Route 40, he took a little turn, a little detour off to the left, and then he, demolished Mountain Parks Electric. Mountain Parks Electric is where, by then, former town board member Dick Brody worked. Immediately after this,
Brody,
he hit building
Dick
next
Brody.
door, which housed Maple Street Builders. It's unclear exactly what Marv's reasoning was for hitting that building, but it can be assumed that he felt they had, stood against him in some way. Marv then took a break from targeting businesses to go after what he felt was the heart of Granby's issues, the town hall. The town hall, however, also housed the town library. When Marv turned off of the gate onto Zero Street, there were a number of people, including children, who'd chosen to shelter inside the building. Because it was 2004 and you had to call or text everybody individually to tell them that there was an armored bulldozer rampaging through town, nobody really knew what was going on. They had just heard some commotion and gunshots. Marv drove up, hit the southwest corner of the building, and then proceeded to drive around the building to the
He
back.
had like
where he started
cameras on
tearing
the
up a
outside of the
lawn playground.
bulldozer with like little
During this
monitors
time,
you could
the building
look
was
through.
evacuated and nobody was home.
That was like his
Pulling
only
onto
way of
Jasper
seeing.
Avenue, Marv proceeded 1 block east before turning right onto First Street, where he demolished a corner office at Liberty Bank. It's believed that he was trying to make a point to a specific bank employee who was on the zoning board. From there, he turned back onto a gate and traveled east for about a quarter of a mile, where he struck again.
that.
This time, the target was not a
Bulldozed
town
your
board member or
workplace.
another business rival, but the press.
Surgically.
Marv felt that Patrick Brower
Taking
had
out
treated
your
him
office
and his business
only.
unfairly for many years. Specifically, he pointed to an incident in which Brower said that he would do an article on Marv's shop. According to Heemeyer, Brower never stopped by the shop. According to Brower, Heemeyer wasn't there when he did. After caving in a portion of the news building, Heemeyer hit the road once more for another 2 blocks before traveling up to Jasper and then onto the property.
Jasper?
Jasper.
This, ultimately, was the true source of Marv's rage. Marv felt that the Thompsons, longtime residents and landowners in Granby and in 1992 entrenched in local government, were conspiring against him. Marv tore apart their offices, damaged a building that they rented to Excel Energy, which was next door, and then moved on to the home of the late Dick Thompson, whose widow still occupied it. She had evacuated long before Heemeyer arrived and thus was uninjured. After taking out the Thompsons' property, he made his way over to the nearby independent propane facility. And there, he began to take shots at the
Not the
propane tanks with
propane.
his 50 caliber rifle. However, Marv had failed to properly align the shielding with the barrel, so he was just kind of firing and hitting his own tank. This was probably the thing that Marv did that freaked people out the most, because police argued that had he managed to ignite one of the tanks, it would have put an entire senior living community that was across the street in danger. And in the immediate aftermath, Brower used this as evidence that Marv intended to kill people, along with things like him hitting the library and him destroying the house of the widow Thompson. But on the other hand, if Marv's primary intention was to kill people, then a bulldozer was a really strange choice of a weapon. If you can turn a bulldozer into a tank, then you can probably assemble a simple pipe bomb. So it doesn't make sense to use the former if your primary goal is to cause mass casualties. If it's just that Marv didn't care if anybody died as a result of his actions, that's more defensible, but it can still be argued against. First of all, Heemeyer was driving very slowly, so nobody who was aware of his position and able to move out of the way was ever in any real danger. There's also the fact that he hit the outdoor aesthetic features of the town hall first, which could be seen as his way of giving people time to evacuate. If we look at Thelma Thompson, Heemeyer knew that she'd have probably at least an hour before he was anywhere near her, and then by the time he did get there, he destroyed the buildings next to her first. As for the propane tanks, it really depends how much Marv knew about propane and propane accessories.
Ah.
Look like I know what a
KillDozer
is. I just want a picture of a goddamn hot dog.
In order to ignite liquid propane, he'd have needed more heat than the bullet's collision with the propane tank would produce. So all he would do is cause leaks. Those leaks could theoretically cause an explosion in the air, which would then go down into the tanks if ignited. But he had brought no ignition source, which suggests his goal was not to ignite the propane. Now, if he did for some reason think that shooting a propane tank would cause it to explode, that's a different story. But given the care he showed in all of the other situations, where, I mean, the guy, avoided even hitting anyone else's business. He really tried to only target his targets. He did actually scrape somebody else's business, but then he immediately diverted. So looking at that, it seems like Marv was going out of his way to avoid hurting anyone. And this suggests that Marv knew that shooting a propane tank would not ignite it. And if Marv knew that shooting a propane tank
he's a
would not
fucking
cause it
welder.
to explode, then he was probably trying to cause a leak. Leaks cost money, so if he had a reason to be upset with independent propane, which I couldn't tell if he did, but we could kind of assume
It's a lot of
that, I guess,
propane.
leaks cost money, and on top of that, there's the fact that it would cause a headache for the EPA. Now, why would Marv want to cause a headache for the EPA? Well, when the concrete plant was getting set up, he called the EPA to complain about things like the noise, and the dust, and the water supply, and after a while, the EPA just started sending his calls to voicemail. So, with all of the evidence that we have, everything
was
that
at
we know about
220.
the situation so far, it seems to me most probable that either Marv was trying to cost independent propane money, or that he was trying to cause a headache for the Environmental Protection Agency. Marv's final strike occurred back on Agate Avenue, where he tore through the side of Gamble's Appliances. Gamble's Appliances was, at the time, owned by Casey Farrell, who served on the board from 97 to 99, and thus was there during the whole zoning thing. He was also in favor of the rezoning, and Farrell believes that this is why he was targeted. What Farrell also believes is that Heemeyer was not aware of a certain structural aspect of Gamble's Appliances, its basement. As the dozer plowed through the building, one tread slipped into the basement, rendering the tank immobile. Now, it wasn't going to be going much further anyway, as just moments earlier the coolant system had failed and it was rapidly leaking black fluid. His mission complete, Marv went out on his own terms, making him the only fatality associated with the KillDozer. When the dust cleared, Granby was in shock, with residents unable to understand what they'd done to
Did he
deserve
skip
this.
over the
But
part where
ultimately,
other
people came to
bulldozers were
realize that
fighting
Marv
him?
had not been making random attacks. Once people started to realize whose buildings had been hit, and especially after a list of names was found at Heemeyer's property, it all kind of came together. In Marv's tapes, he outlines what he argues was a conspiracy against him at the lowest levels of government, organized by the Thompsons and executed by their associates. He believed that the Thompsons, being a prominent family in town, had planned to help their friend Cody get his property back and set up a new concrete plant. And when Marv swooped in and bought the property for more than Dochev was willing to pay, that caused problems. And Heemeyer also believed that because he had been unwilling to sell the property to Dochev for less than what Kleiner had promised him, they hatched a plan to keep him from ever being successful in Granby. They withdrew offers to sell him land even at the prices they named so that he wouldn't have access to the sewer main. They refused a maintenance easement so that he would always be in violation of town ordinances, and they could use that against him at any time. They wouldn't buy his property for anywhere near what it was worth, even when he gave them the appraisal, just so he'd be stuck there. They rezoned his land against his will, and then fined him when he sued the board. They ordered him to shut down his business until he hooked up to the sewer system, and then they refused him an easement yet again. And when he finally went to sell the place to somebody other than Dochev, they tried to force him to pay for the sewer line himself before finalizing it. Whether it was real or imagined, Marv Heemeyer genuinely believed that he was being targeted by a group of other business owners, and that they were using the government to do it. A lot of the narratives that paint Heemeyer in a bad light today do so by making it seem like this was all about money and pride for him. But that's not what Marv's motivation truly was. Even if it's assumed that the town was not in any way actually working against him, it wasn't about money, it wasn't about property, it was about showing members of a government that he perceived as corrupt that they were not invulnerable to the consequences of their actions. Now, of course, Marv likely allowed his distaste for government in general to color his perceptions of those around him. But even with that consideration, there's still a degree of fairness to Marv's arguments, and there's reasons to be skeptical of the narrative crafted by Brower. Maybe there was no conspiracy, and maybe Marv really was just a victim of a series of horrible misunderstandings. But that does not change the fact that something about this whole ordeal feels off. There are aspects of the story that don't fit together, omissions of relevant details, and a complete lack of contemporary objective journalism. I absolutely would not say that there's any proof that there was a conspiracy against Marv Heemeyer, but what I will also say is that under these circumstances, a conspiracy actually wouldn't be that odd. And I say that because much of the reason this story has so much controversy is the ending, not the things that led up to it. The fact of the matter is, this is just how small town governments are a lot of the time. You have families that have been around for such a long time that they have connections that run deeper than political parties, and they have influence that transcends election cycles. There are a lot of these good old boys clubs that Heemeyer and Spencer both talk about in the Tread documentary. They are all over the United States, and they do hand out favors to friends. It's also not uncommon to see money change hands in ways that don't necessarily line up.
If you're in the big club,
somebody might overpay a board member for their used pickup truck, then, a month later, the board member votes a certain way. In a lot of American small towns, there's this you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of mentality. And that's at every level of the social contract. That's person to person, that is business owner to business owner, that is elected official to elected official. And I want to be clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with a small town governing itself. I strongly encourage these communities to celebrate their unique cultural traits and their history. Here in Phoenixville, Aiden and I are extremely vocal about preserving the historical sections of town, as well as keeping business local by preventing the big brands from coming into our main street. And also our Bridge Street, which is the actual main street. Main Street's kind of an avenue that it's the wrong way here, but you know what, that's how we like it. The problems only occur because people pay so little attention to local governments, which allows bad actors to get away with insane levels of corruption. We're currently seeing an issue unfold here in town where the board is trying to use eminent domain to force a property owner to give up his land to a developer so that that developer can build luxury apartments. That is an entirely improper use of eminent domain, being as it serves only to enrich one property owner at the expense of another. But that doesn't matter, they're trying to do it anyway. The only reason it's being held up right now and that it's not going through is that the landowner knows his rights and is actively standing up for himself. And if there's one thing that we can learn from the reasonable man forced to do unreasonable things, Marvin Heemeyer, it's that we need to do that not just for ourselves, but for each other as well. Had the community stood up for Marv during the zoning dispute, when the town was absolutely, admittedly not following procedure, none of this would have happened. And I don't mean to suggest that the community of Granby, Colorado is responsible for what was done to Marv or what Marv chose to do. They too were victims of what was ultimately the board's failure to negotiate the situation. I only wish to express the belief that in order for small towns to be the incredible aspect of American life that they have the potential to be, we must be willing to look out for each other. And, if need be, we must be willing to metaphorically bulldoze corruption so that another Marv Heemeyer doesn't have to do it literally.
Metaphorically
I will admit, I usually don't craft
bulldoze
my outros in quite so specific a manner, so this feels a little awkward. But with all that said, if you want to support what we're doing here at the Lore Lodge, you can subscribe to us on Patreon, or you can become a member here on YouTube for just $1 a month. That will get you access to a few cool things, like our drunk folklore/history show, Liquored Lore, that comes out once a month. We're actually shooting that this weekend, oh no. It will also get you access, now that I have finally made the leap into the 21st century and started taking my notes, by typing them, it'll get you access to the notes for all of these videos going forward. In this specific case, it will get you access to the transcript of the Marvin Heemeyer tapes, which has been somewhat edited, but is still going to be somewhat in the form I read it in, partially because I think that's funny. You can also support what we're doing by getting our merch. That will be coming from Bunker Branding. We have confirmed the designs. It will be soon. We're very excited. And if you would like to consume the Lodge, you can do so by drinking our coffee. We get it from Tableau Roasting Company down in Lexington, Kentucky.
Everyone has fucking coffee.
Roaster. You are supporting a small business as well as this business, which is also small. And they have a blend that is designed by Stakuyi and History of Everything podcast. So if you're interested in their Lewis and Dark blend, you can grab that, or you can get our Mount Pocono perk, Or, best of both worlds, there's a bundle you can get that comes with one of each and a mug of each.
Ooh.
That coffee helps us power through all of the days as we are often up very late. Part of the reason we're up late is that we have our live show on Sunday nights, and that is from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
So yeah, Lore Lodge, pretty good channel for like unsolved mysteries and like Bigfoot type stuff. I watch them from time to time. They seem to do at least enough research.
They do enough.
They're not always right, but like they try to be right.
Yeah, I think they did a great job on this.
Yeah.
Fucking, did you you say you had a couple other stuff for us to take a peek at?
You sent me some stuff on Discord.
Ooh, yeah, I did.
I could I'm pretty sure Wendigoon did a video on him, but that might be really long.
It is probably really long.
I'll check though. Yeah, just play some of the clips you sent on the Discord. Here's one from CBS Colorado we could watch. I'll send that to you if I can. Yeah, there we go. Nope, that's not it. 1 second here. Yeah, there you go.
And on this day 15 years ago, bizarre and frightening events played out in Granby. A man named Marvin Heemeyer terrorized the mountain town with a bulldozer he had retrofitted with thick armor. Heemeyer had a running feud with the town over a zoning issue and used that bulldozer to destroy 12 buildings. No one was hurt in that rampage, and Heemeyer killed himself as authorities moved in.
Wide demolition.
Driving it, but there is someone inside.
The man inside this armor-plated bulldozer is Marv Heemeyer. As horrified townspeople run for their lives, Heemeyer wrecks buildings and vehicles one after another.
So we do have a dozer that's completely armored and it is tearing down buildings.
And he's ready to take on sheriff's deputies or anybody else who stands in his way.
Dude, they're just like running around next to it. Like, get away from it.
Heemeyer's an accomplished welder who spent a lot of time inside a secret workshop.
Yeah, it's all encased in metal and you can't see who's driving or anything.
There, he outfitted the dozer with 2 sheets of half-inch steel plating with a layer of concrete in between.
What type do you need? It's the biggest armor-piercing ammunition he has.
On this day, he seals himself in and takes off on a violent ride. Inside his cockpit, 2 assault rifles, lots of ammo, and video monitors to help him see where he's going. A bank, a hardware store, a concrete factory, even the town hall, and especially the police department. The one thing all of those places have in common, Heemeyer feels he has been wronged by these businesses or the people who own them. He even exacts revenge on the home of the town's former mayor.
He does have armor-piercing weaponry.
Deputies and SWAT teams try everything. But even armor-piercing bullets can't penetrate Marv Heemeyer's homemade metal and concrete shield.
Yeah, there's a KillDozer video game.
At one point,
where you
a
build
heavy
it
equipment
and drive
operator
it.
decides to put a stop to the carnage. He climbs behind the wheel of his front-end loader
Here we go.
and gets set to take on the armored bulldozer.
KillDozer
But
first.
quickly, the
Boom.
operator finds himself in an industrial-sized game of chicken.
Yeah, dude, this is
Heemeyer
what I
speeds
wanted
ahead,
to see.
aiming directly for the blockage. Realizing his intentions, the loader attempts to flee, but the armored dozer
KillDozer's
gives
hauling
chase.
ass.
Yeah.
Ramming the tractor off its path, it steams
like
ahead
doesn't
to
even
its next
try
target.
to avoid it. He's just like, oh, I'm going right
Authorities
for
seized
it.
the narrow opportunity, using the front loader truck to block the dozer in. The civilian operator hurries to safety. Forced to continue ahead, Heemeyer pushes his creation to the limit. The bulldozer grinds to a halt under the rubble of a steel building. Its engine has called it quits. As authorities try to get into the cab of his homemade tank, Marv Heemeyer takes his own life.
Hero.
It takes officers several hours and a cutting torch to finally get inside the cab. None of the townspeople are hurt, but the price tag on this
When life gives you lemons, make life take those lemons back by building a 60-ton armored bulldozer and attacking your neighbor's cement plant. This plan might sound peculiar, but it has already been tried and tested by a certain Marvin Heemeyer. Regarded as a folk hero by some and as a domestic terrorist by others, one thing about Heemeyer remains certain: his impressive engineering skills. He meticulously crafted what can best be described as a homemade tank within the confines of his metal shed before unleashing it on the town of Granby, seeking retribution against all those whom he perceived had wronged him. Hello, and welcome to another Tank Encyclopedia narrated article. I'm your host Andrew, and today we are covering Marvin Heemeyer's Armored Bulldozer, an intriguing vehicle posthumously dubbed the KillDozer, despite the fact it killed no one. A testament to one man's resolve, engineering brilliance, madness, and the destructive power of anger unchecked.
Yeah, hate is a hell of a
Before becoming the
motivator.
mechanic of chaos, Heemeyer was a successful welder, owning a muffler repair shop franchise named Mountain View Muffler, based in the town of Granby, Colorado. Beneath the surface of Heemeyer's seemingly ordinary life, a web of grudges and conflicts was brewing. One of the major quarrels that fueled his rage was a zoning dispute involving his property and the Dochev family, who had intended to erect an indoor concrete batch plant on neighboring grounds.
He said he wrecked.
Despite the zoning commission's advice to Cody Dochev, urging him to negotiate with Heemeyer for the purchase of his property, an agreement between them could not be reached. Nevertheless, the commission and the town mayor made the controversial decision to allow the construction of the plant to proceed in 2001, despite Heemeyer's impassioned concerns about the potential noise and air pollution. More importantly, according to Heemeyer, the plant was being built on top of the only road leading to his shop, thus blocking access to it and putting his business in jeopardy. He repeatedly petitioned the city to rezone the property to prevent the plant's construction, but his pleas, appeals, and lawsuits were all rejected on multiple occasions, and mocked by the local press. With the zoning commission declaring their decision as final, he took matters into his own hands and purchased a Komatsu D355A bulldozer with the intention of using it to create an alternative route to his muffler shop. Marvin Heemeyer also faced a litany of sewage-related issues stemming from the inadequate disposal solution he had inherited
It
from
ended
his
up
property.
like he bought a bulldozer to use
Desiring
it
a
for
proper
its
sewage
proper
line, he
purpose,
faced exorbitant
and then it's
costs
like,
imposed
oh well,
by
they're
the
not
sewer
going to let me
district,
do this. And
nearly
it's like, well,
twice the property's
I have a
value.
bulldozer.
Rejecting both the alternatives and the injustice of shouldering the financial burden.
Let's just see what
he
I got
began
in my
pumping sewage into a
toolbox. Well, I
nearby
have this
irrigation
huge
ditch in
bulldozer,
defiance of
so
regulations. The resultant penalties marked a tipping point for Heemeyer, crystallizing his belief that reasonable men must sometimes do unreasonable things.
Yeah.
After failing to sell
So you
his
know how I
Komatsu
fucking
D355A bulldozer, Heemeyer
Oh, you what?
You know how I talked about? Oh, well, I wonder how that stock price went.
yeah.
So the incident happened June 2004. So about right here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Within a year,
really put him on the map, huh?
Yeah, within a year, it damn near doubled the stock price. 2 years, it's tripled.
Heemeyer perceived this as a sign from God, prompting him to devise a plan of retribution against the Dochefs, Thompsons, members of the town board, zoning commission, and local press. In March of 2003, he deeded his house to a friend, sold his muffler shop property, and secured a lease for a half of the building he previously owned to finish some work. After erecting a wall and changing locks to isolate his shed, he began up-armoring and arming the bulldozer while living on site, unnoticed by other residents of Granby.
He's like secretly endorsed
Expressing astonishment
by the
at never
company.
being caught,
Yeah.
Heemeyer left letters and audio tapes claiming that God
They
had
used
clouded
his,
the vision of those who had visited
his
shed during
Amazon
the 80s
referral
period,
code that Phil's
further
trying to get
affirming
people
the
to
divine
do.
nature of his mission. The D355A bulldozer, manufactured by the Japanese construction equipment manufacturer Komatsu, first entered service in the 1970s. Designed to be cost-effective and easy to operate rather than the best in its class, this large 49-ton bulldozer was originally developed for use in overseas mines. It is powered by an efficient, low-maintenance turbocharged 410 horsepower SA6 D155-4A engine, equipped with all-speed lubrication system and double filters.
That's a big
to
boy
help it
engine
stay
right
clean.
there.
Yeah.
D355A comes equipped with a 4-speed gearbox, enabling a top forward and reverse speed of 7.45 miles per hour. Thanks to its single lever control of speed and direction, cozy cabin and an array of driver assist systems, the D355A is also considered to be a comfortable and straightforward machine to drive, which might have been a determining factor back when Heemeyer originally bought it. Utilizing
Yeah,
his
if I'm gonna
welding
fucking
skills
be
and the
killing
high
all
load
these
capacity of his
niggas,
Komatsu
destroying their
bulldozer,
shit, I want to be
Well, no,
comfy
set
doing
out
it.
to create an
He bought it to
armored cover
build a
for the
road.
protection of
He
the
didn't
vehicle and the
like.
operator
I don't
inside.
think the Rampage
To create this cover,
factored into the
Heemeyer
decision
employed
at
two
all.
half-inch tool steel plates
It's
sandwiching
true.
5,000 psi.
It was
Like he
just
just was
concrete,
left with a
effectively
bulldozer,
creating
and he's
Yeah,
like,
concrete armor.
"All right, I guess I'll
This
repurpose this
robust
thing."
design
I forgot
proved
that's how
remarkably
God
effective
planned
Robust.
against
it.
all arms
That's
fire,
how God
including
planned it.
armor-piercing
They
rifle
said it.
ammunition
They said
and
the
light
thing.
explosives. In fact, the armor plates had to be cut open with an oxyacetylene cutting torch after multiple attempts to punch through with explosives failed. Furthermore, the armor proved to be very well set up even against more targeted attacks on the firing ports. It seems likely that nothing short of a medium caliber cannon or an anti-tank missile might have penetrated the armor of the KillDozer, although other sections were definitely more vulnerable. Armored up, the KillDozer's height rose to 4 meters, casting an imposing silhouette. However, these modifications resulted in a weight increase to 61 tons, likely slowing down the bulldozer and reducing its horsepower per ton to 6.7. The hydraulic track motors on the Komatsu did an excellent job of supporting the increased weight of the dozer and provided sufficient torque to keep the tracks turning despite this extensive increase in weight. While the extra weight improved the KillDozer's demolition capabilities and helped when facing off against other heavy machinery, the strain on the engine was probably too much, and it seems to have been on its way to giving up by the time the events were over. The ventilation was also probably insufficient to properly cool the engine, especially as the extra armor served to box the heat inside the motor compartment. The engine was also not run under normal conditions, but probably pushed to its limits for the duration of the 2-hour rampage, demolishing buildings and pushing out other machinery without any break or period to cool down. Heemeyer added 5 cameras to the tank dozer, providing crucial all-round visibility to the operator inside. These were safeguarded by 3-inch bulletproof plastic and were linked to 3 monitors in the driver's cabin. Air nozzles within these camera positions were hooked up to a central compressed air tank on the driver's left side, which could be used to blow away dust and debris, maintaining clear lines of sight. Furthermore, the KillDozer boasted a sophisticated air conditioning system and onboard fans to ensure Heemeyer's comfort during his harrowing endeavor. The bulldozer was optimistically loaded with extra fuel and food, medicine, ammunition, paper towels, and starter fluid, indicating that Heemeyer planned and hoped for a far longer rampage. The bulldozer was armed with a 50 cal Barrett M82 semi-automatic rifle at the rear, though its line of fire was severely limited due to the rear-mounted digger, a 5.56 FN FNC semi-automatic rifle at the front, and a .223 Ruger Mini 14 at the right side. In addition, Heemeyer carried a .357 Magnum revolver and a 9mm Kel-Tec P11 as sidearms, which could be fired through small ports on the cabin. While this was relatively light armament given the sheer bulk of the vehicle, it was enough to take on the civilians and police that the vehicle faced, and procuring anything larger would have probably drawn unwanted attention towards the construction of
I mean,
the
he already
vehicle.
had a 50 caliber rifle. That's as big as
On
it
June
gets.
4th, 2004, around 2:40 p.m. MST, Heemeyer greased up his bulldozer to make it harder for people to climb on top, and then entered the
Time
cabin.
to oil up.
Reports
He
varied on
greased
whether
it
he
up.
bolted or welded the entrance shut, but police later found a usable hatch. He smashed through the east wall of the shed that housed his bulldozer and proceeded to his first target, which was, unsurprisingly, the cement plant. As Heemeyer commenced the demolition,
Well, goddamn.
Well, you don't want to watch the whole thing?
Well, I mean, he was just gonna cover what it was.
That's
again.
true. I guess we just did. Yeah, true. I sent you a couple other things in there, too.
It started just after 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon in the town of Granby.
This is when we first arrived on scene.
The
and it
title
looked
of
the
this,
officers were firing
looks
some pretty heavy
sinister.
arms at him.
It's like interviewing the victims. I brought my bulldozer to finish the job.
They do not know what reason is.
Yeah,
Reason
trigger them.
to them is doing it their way.
This man owned a business
Yeah,
next
I
to
think
the
he was
concrete
building that
company
shit
that
for,
he had
like,
a long-standing
years.
beef with a concrete company in Granby.
This is a dispute that dates back 3 years ago. Damage, we're told, could be in the millions. They'll have a better assessment of that later on today.
You had to take me on en masse. Well, I'm going to take you on by myself.
It's almost been 20 years since the KillDozer incident in Granby, Colorado, and today we are in Granby, and we're going to be talking to the people that Marvin Heemeyer had the most beef with. I've looked everywhere on the internet, and there's not many examples of like
The
first-hand
most
interviews
beef
of people
with.
that have dealt with Marvin. We're going to go straight to the beef, and we're going to figure out what went wrong here. I know from first-hand experience how someone
Just
could have
referring
problems
to
with the
this
town,
shit
feel
as
like they were getting
beef.
walked all over.
Beef,
Hearing
yeah.
about an
I
hour,
think
my
that's funny.
personal Komatsu D355A, which is
Yeah,
the
that
same
shit was
KillDozer that brought this
overcooked.
town down, is going to be coming through here on a trailer.
Cody, this
So-
is 14 hours out of the way. This doesn't make any sense.
No, it's not that far out. It's worth it. I'm kind of nervous actually because I feel like maybe it's something they don't want to talk about.
True. What if they love it or they hate it?
Sometimes you get this like cult effect of a small town where no one comes in or out for 100 years.
This guy's
They can
parents
sometimes
were
be
definitely
really, like,
related.
standoffish and rude and want to piss people off for fun. They could also be really
Why do you
nice.
say
So
that?
there's a lot of kind people here.
Yeah, I mean,
We're
you
gonna
just look at his eyes. He's
investigate
definitely
Colorado,
inbred.
and we're gonna see what the KillDozer means to them.
It's a shame.
What the hell? So pump is slow. Please let off the handle for 12 seconds. Start again. It's super cold out. It's like 5 degrees.
For 12
There's a thing in the
seconds.
gas station that says it happened here in Granby.
It was me.
You get many people buying this book? Is this like a tourist destination for that now?
Yeah, not like hugely, but so like maybe a couple of them a
Really?
month, like 2.
Were you guys here when that happened?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, he was like kind of like behind our building.
Is everybody pretty chill about it? Or is it like a sensitive topic for some people?
It's a little bit sensitive. There's a thing that happens when a person dies that they gain all the virtues. You can't talk ill of the dead.
Right.
So everyone's, oh, he was the best guy.
I know that like my mom used to wait on him at the El Monte restaurant. You know, she said that he seemed like a decent guy.
Oh, okay. Already like someone was here when it happened.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's like a little tourist destination now.
Yeah.
Like, damn, dude.
Who wrote this book?
Patrick Brower.
Oh.
There's a couple places I want to stop. There's one called Sky High News. It's the news station. They publish a little ad. For
I like how he asks and then he finds out and he's disappointed.
Disappointed,
There
yeah.
are stories from both sides. It's really hard to know, but we're gonna get to the bottom of it. This is WD reporting. So if you guys don't know about KillDozer, it's a very long story, but long story short, this guy named Marvin Heemeyer lived in Granby, Colorado. Marvin had a muffler shop in town. He moved from another state.
Great building wasn't the best location, but it was a good building.
Did a great job. There's a lot of people that speak highly of him. And something was wrong with the sewage on the site. The town kept like fining him more and more. And so he got into a lawsuit with the town and lost.
Although they probably cost me $500,000 or more, I know it's been more.
And he said that people would like chuckle as he walked out of the courtroom and stuff.
The town council, I'd pass them in the post office, and they'd snicker at me after they knew I lost.
There was a lot of drama and beef here.
These people have figured out a pretty good way, being a small community, how to get away with doing things wrong and doing it legally.
There's so many details in between here. I'll do the best I can to like fill everybody in as we're going through all this. But Marvin felt like he was wronged by the town and ended up buying a giant bulldozer just like the one we just bought.
I don't believe that any of the Komatsu D355
Just like the one we
were
just
as
bought.
in good shape as this one was.
Parked it in his muffler shop, and he
It
spent
like
like a
seems
year
like he
armoring this
wants to
bulldozer.
do
And then
it.
one day he just greased up the sides so nobody can climb up on top of it, and he drove it through his muffler shop and plowed over half of this town. That was June 4th, 2004. So the 20th anniversary is actually coming up. The muffler shop is not here anymore. He bulldozed part of it, and then they bulldozed the rest of it. I have maps here of the exact route, start to finish, that the KillDozer took from Marvin's muffler shop all the way to the end where it fell in the hardware store basement and he couldn't get out. We're gonna follow that route. So the first location, his
course
muffler
we
shop.
are.
KillDozer was built right up here. They're saying that this was the building.
It's a trash company.
Yeah, there's tons of concrete trucks lined up right there across from it. This was right where Marvin's shop was.
This is cool.
This is the concrete plant that wronged him.
Yes.
Supposedly.
You know, you can call it revenge. I don't know. I don't doubt that there is.
What the hell? We should stop here and talk to them.
Yes.
Hey, my name's Cody. I had a quick question. Is this the shop where KillDozer was built?
Yeah.
This exact building?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Well, that little shop right there. That's where those 4 dumpsters are if you walk out.
Really?
It's that shop
Okay.
right there.
Okay, interesting. All right, appreciate your help, man.
No problem.
I asked if that was the shop where the KillDozer were built, but he says that it was this building right here, which makes a lot more sense.
Oh. Wait, does it say mufflers on the side? It does.
That's the muffler shop, right? That is for mufflers. That's it. That's it. Look.
Oh, no
That was
way. Now we gotta walk around the outside.
Is that it? How did he get it out? That's the shop. You can't fit that dozer through there.
You see on the front side of the building? And it
Yeah,
has
you
the three-bay
can.
doors
2
and just go
inches.
back.
Right. Let's talk to him. I want to get in there.
Sorry to bother you. Is that part of this business here?
How I understand it is, it was leased by that guy back in the day, and then once it all went down, it was just kind of folded into the business.
We were really curious if there's any way to look at it.
I'd really rather not. That's a work area for our guys. You can like take some pictures from the outside. but-
Okay, no problem. Appreciate it, man.
Not allowed in.
Let's come back at midnight. That's Marvin's shop.
Huh.
Oh my gosh. Dude, he totally built it in there.
I think they remodeled it, guys. Everything in front of us was the concrete plant. So you see that tower? That's all part of the concrete plant. Those are the people that he felt like really wronged him. So
Yeah.
Cody Dochev was the owner of this concrete plant, and they named it Cody's Way. I would be curious if they changed it to Cody's Way after the incident. This is the concrete plant that he really had beef with the owner, Cody Dochev.
Come to find out his name was Cody Dochev. He came back there and introduced himself to me about the rudest, most arrogant person.
I'm gonna see if I can talk to him. I'm not sure where they are nowadays or if they're still here. There's the office. It says office.
Hopefully it's open.
There's nobody here. It's not running. I mean, it's too cold for concrete, so that actually makes sense.
Yeah, that checks.
Let's come back on June 4th. So we came out of the muffler shop, we demolished that whole concrete batch plant, and so this is where everybody started panicking. They called the cops, and then he went literally out onto the main street.
Hopefully, the community will learn something from this.
This is the main stretch of Granby right here. So his muffler shop is up there.
And he was just driving on this road.
So he plowed through that muffler shop, and then he came out onto this main stretch and just headed for downtown. We're gonna pull in here. There's a lot going on right here. I'm really curious if there's any KillDozer relics in this hardware store. Do you guys get many questions about KillDozer?
No, we don't.
The big armored book.
No, we don't.
Really? Oh, they carry the book here too.
Get the book.
We have books.
Yep.
It feels wrong saying KillDozer here because I feel like it's like a cuss word. I just feel weird saying it. It's like going to New York and saying, "Do you hear about?" He went down this street, cut left, and he plowed over this. I plowed through the electric company. That's a brand new building.
Yep.
And then he turned left up here, so we're gonna turn left. We're on Jasper now. The city hall was right here.
Oh,
he
Jasper.
completely demolished it. He was suing them for like
Jasper,
discrimination or
don't
whatever
touch
it was.
those buildings.
This was
Jasper.
the city hall. He completely
Jasper,
destroyed that.
down.
They rebuilt the town hall right over the street, right in the middle.
Yep.
So they got a brand new town hall.
Town hall's right there.
I'm gonna walk in there and I'm gonna see if anybody wants to talk. I'll be back.
I was curious if you guys get many questions about KillDozer.
We do. We don't praise the man because he could have killed a lot of people.
Right.
Caliber and all the guns.
Were you here when that happened?
I was the one that took the call from the sheriff's department and said to evacuate.
Wow.
Whoa.
There was no one in the building when he came with the bulldozer.
Really? Yeah.
So we
Right.
had plenty of time to get
Right,
out.
right. Yeah, that's really interesting. We're just traveling through, and I was curious about it ever since then. If it was like a big deal, or if it was like a sensitive topic. You know, like.
It's a sensitive topic for the ones that work here and some of the town members.
AKA the ones that fucked with them.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we lost him in front of our community.
Right.
The community came together. This is a beautiful building. So really, he did us all a favor.
Thanks for talking about it. I appreciate it.
He got us a new building.
So I went in there and they were really sweet. She's like, I was the one that took the sheriff's call to evacuate the building when it happened. She was in there. And then she was like, also he kind of did us a favor by cleaning out all the crap buildings because they built a new nice library there and everything. And I don't know if that's a jab, like, oh, he did us a favor, you know, could be a way of dealing with it. But let's talk to more people. He came down the street from the town hall. This is a small town, so it's easy for him to do a lot of damage.
Right.
Went across this corner in between this light post and this bank, and it looked almost identical. He plowed the whole side of that off. Then he turned left on Main Street here and went all the way down this road quite a ways. This thing moved like 4 miles an hour, keep in mind, so like the whole town just has time to like watch it. So we're gonna go down here to Sky High News. They're still here, and I bet that we could get some sort of a story on this.
Yep.
No way.
Sky High News.
Sky High News. Wow, he plowed this building. So this is the Sky High News building that he completely destroyed. And then there's footage of him turning right here and plowing all these people's cars into a pile while the SWAT team hides around the corner of the porch. I feel like this is our next stop. I should knock on the door.
Yep.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
I had a quick question. I'm from Tennessee, and I'm kind of doing interviews with people who have heard about the KillDozer before.
Oh, okay.
And I was curious if you heard about it or like knew much.
I mean, yeah, I have heard about it.
Did you know that it like plowed right through all these cars right here?
Yeah, so that old building, that's the Sky High News building.
Yeah.
That building was torn down like completely.
Really? Okay.
Redone, yeah.
And were you here when that happened?
I was not here, no. It happened in 2004.
I said, you know, KillDozer just plowed through all the cars right in front of your house right here. He's like, yeah, I heard about that. All right, so we're outside Sky High News. I'm just going to walk in there and let them know that my Komatsu bulldozer is going to be arriving to town in about an hour. And there could be a few different reactions to that, but hopefully they don't think
I'm
I'm a
really
terrorist.
digging the fucking David Koresh glasses that he's got on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doing a kind of a little documentary thing on the KillDozer, and I kind of have a little story for you guys if you're interested in it.
What do you mean by that?
So I bought the identical bulldozer.
Oh, God.
And here in about 2 hours, it's going through town.
And you're filming that?
We are. I thought I'd tell you guys if it was something you might be interested in.
Sure. Do other folks know that you're going to do that?
Nobody yet.
Can we give some people who might want to know a heads up so that nobody
Yeah.
is concerned?
Yeah, that's
okay.
really cool. It's not like, it doesn't have armor on it.
No, totally. I just thought, given the history.
Yeah, for sure. Were you any of you here when that happened?
No.
Oh, okay.
Our former publisher who wrote the book that's
Yeah.
right there was. And then our former publisher is married to the son of who was the sheriff at the time. Am I saying that correctly?
Police chief, he climbed on top of the building.
Yeah.
He was like trying to get in.
Oh, wow.
He shot at us and stuff like that.
I see. Do you have any tips of anybody we could interview?
Probably Patrick Brower.
Damn, dude.
Who wrote this book?
Patrick Brower.
Oh.
So he's the author of the book.
Oh, okay.
There, he's
Oh,
our
okay.
former publisher.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you
gonna
so
have
much,
to
guys.
start
Thank you.
watching this, dude, I think.
So none of them were here when it happened, but as soon as they
I've
told
heard
them
of him
Dozer was
before.
coming through here, they're like, do you mind if we let everybody know? So they're telling the cops.
I think he's actually
right now and say that we're bringing a Komatsu bulldozer through Granby.
Oh no! Wait!
That's hilarious. He then went from Sky High News down to Independent Propane here. I don't know why he shot all the propane tanks. I think he was just living it up. He brought a 50 cal and a revolver with him, and he opened fire with his 50 cal and all these propane tanks. So I want to see if the propane tanks are still here.
Oh, there it is, right there.
Independent.
Same
It all
bullet
looks much
holes.
Smaller now. It's like everything grew up around it.
Right.
We gotta talk to him. I was curious if there was anybody here that I could talk to about the KillDozer incident.
I don't even know if there's anyone here that was in the county at that time.
Really? Wow. All right. Well, thanks for your time.
Don't want to talk?
No, they're just like, nobody was here from that time. Like, nobody knows any, like, just new people.
They have no stories.
Just
That's
new people,
just such a.
There's no story. Everybody's really nice, I will say. We haven't encountered one rude person yet. So this is really cool, because there's, like, first-hand recording of all this. This piece of concrete that he backs the dozer up to is the same.
There's a big chip mark.
That is bent rebar. Piece of KillDozer concrete here. There's where the rebar was.
That's a
So he
souvenir.
came back up this, and at the top, there's a giant grader sitting there, trying to block him from getting out to destroy the rest of the town. So they're like, if we can stop him here, he can't get out. And he literally just rams it out of the way, like this giant
Picks
grader.
it up.
So then he came back out here on the main street, and I feel like at that point, because he's backtracking, I feel like he got everything that he wanted. But then he pulled up to this place, High Country Appliances. That was a hardware store, right?
Yep, it was Gamble's.
We're gonna pull in here, and we're gonna see if this hardware store still has a basement. This is where the dozer just sank in because there's a basement here and he didn't know, so one track fell in and he couldn't get out. That's why I'm bringing my dozer here today, is I really want to try and see if it would get out. It's a new building.
It's actually decent, yeah.
They filled it in the basement. Looks about 20 years old. My Pillow's advertising where the KillDozer fell. It looked identical. It's like the opposite of the whole situation.
It's turned into a minefield every time.
All right, there's no basement, guys. They filled it in.
Solid ground.
The dozer tried coming along here and fell into the basement right here, and then he made it to like right here. That's crazy.
Yeah.
This is where it ended.
And nobody knows. Like, it's all covered up.
Yeah, it's like kind of low key. Like they don't
Really?
even. That's just so crazy for a town to go through and not even.
Not mention it at all.
Wait. There's barriers.
Oh, like someone's gonna do
They're
it
like,
again.
it's not happening again. Hey, there's no basement now. You would not fall in again. This guy in this white truck is code enforcement. He's exactly the type of person Marvin would have had beef with.
They just
Nothing
ruined
could stop
a good
them
man's
now.
life, a lot of people's lives, but that's their style.
We're YouTubers
That's
from
their
Tennessee. We have a
style.
big YouTube channel.
Just imagine that
Okay,
though,
did
that
they
like
make a call
every
about us?
year
There's
someone
3
does
cop
it
cars
at the
right now.
same
They gotta
town.
be so interested in what's going on.
2 there.
It's like, well, I'll either get this permit or, you
So we're
know.
filming a video and kind of interviewing people, just getting stories. So it's identical to the one that is the KillDozer.
Is it modeled to look like Heemeyer's?
No. It's
Is it
that
modeled
before
to
it
look
had the
like
armor.
Heemeyer?
It's on the trailer.
Right. Yeah, we're not unloading or anything.
That was our primary concern.
Right.
I had the understanding that you were going to drive a model KillDozer through town.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, no.
And so I was like, well, heavy equipment is allowed on the highway.
Right.
So I was like, as long as he's as far right over as he can be, I was like, he's not breaking any law.
You're allowed to drive heavy equipment on the roads here?
Within reason.
Okay.
I was raised here when Heemeyer didn't fit. He
Within
grew
reason.
from his tracks.
Don't get any
last
ideas.
decade. Granby
Really?
PD wasn't even a thing back then.
Really?
It was just the sheriff's office.
Oh, okay.
Might I remind you, sir, that Marvin Heemeyer was a reasonable man who had to do unreasonable things.
Yeah, right.
That's
Reasonable,
where
you
getting stories,
say.
just seeing what people's thoughts are on
Read
it.
you loud and
My
clear.
father actually used to work with Heemeyer. They were
Wow.
relatives together. He was working with the County Road and Bridge at the time, and they were the ones who had custody of the bulldozer after
Right.
the fact. Well, as a kid, I got to go see it.
Go look at it.
It was impressive.
His dad was friends with Heemeyer. That's
insane.
It's like, yeah, I'm hearing so many different sides to everything. That's what we came here for. We have secured an interview with Sky High News, so we're gonna, I don't know, I've never had an interview before except for MSN, NBC, CBS.
That's a lot of interviews.
America's Got Talent.
You were on America's Got Talent?
Survivor. Gold Rush.
Those are TV shows.
Dollar General.
That's a store.
Work job interview. I have to tell these people now that I'm gonna plow the rest of their town down.
No.
I haven't showered in like 2 days, and like right now my balls got like a sour scent to them now. It's great.
I'll get that out of here.
You're supposed to wind them down.
Come on down.
No.
This is the highbrow show.
Yeah, I'm just bringing it into the gutter.
I see both sides. I really do.
Yeah, within reason doesn't apply to this dude. Sounds good to me.
Our bulldozer is going to pull up right in line with the old hardware store that it fell in. This is the first time since 2004 that this dozer has been in town. Right across from the shop where it fell into the basement.
Super turbo shock. Okay, yeah, we can look that up.
It's so big. That's crazy.
Right in front of the store.
Hey, but you're keeping
Dubai money.
Guys, let's undo these chains.
No, go. It's not a 55A though. It was a 55A. Here's the book. You need to read this before you make any real strong conclusions about how Marv was picked on.
Well, we didn't make any conclusions yet. That's what we're here for.
Cool. Call me up. I'm the author of the book.
Okay.
I was an associate producer on Tread, the movie.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So
Sweet,
you guys
sweet.
need to call me.
We'll do that.
Perfect.
Thank you. Oh, there's a mouse. There's a mouse, Kelly. What?
No! Smar's back, and he's a mouse.
The town is like, no, not again. I can't do this again. That was a lot of fun. We're gonna ship this down to Tennessee now and unload it for a special project we have coming up. We have to
Yeah, right. That's where the oil comes from. Good point.
Oh, the author of the KillDozer book came up and gave me a copy right before we pulled out, which is really cool.
He said that it was a D355A, but John said that the A is the same. This is an A. It just doesn't have the decal.
Right. I can see both sides after this. There's a lot of nice people in this town. I could also see how someone could get really f***ed over by the government. Someone could be crazy, and someone could also sound crazy but have really base claims.
Right.
Anyways, interpret it how you want. Everybody here seems to be nice people now, though. And they say that the town has changed a lot since then. Did it change because of him? Maybe. Sometimes reasonable men must do unreasonable things. Do you guys want a truck?
I'd love a truck.
I'm giving away this truck. We don't want to drive it 60 hours back home, so if you guys want it, it drives perfectly fine. It's a great truck. I bought this today just for this. I'm gonna grab my shit out and you guys can take this truck, literally. You want it?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Absolutely.
Give him a truck. That's pretty sweet. Very cool. That looks like it.
The fuck?
Oh no! Today, we're gonna install a turbocharger. 17 of them. This is actually gonna suck, but mostly for my fabrication team. Because I have jury duty.
Doesn't take
I
that
have jury
long.
duty this week. I gotta say.
Look at that pollution.
That was fun. Look at his office.
Sure.
He's still good right here.
If you stand up, you're in the dirty
Look,
area.
it's all. It is quite clear to me that we have a significant power shortage. If you're not familiar with mechanical terms, a turbocharger, basically what it does through nuclear reactions, it supplements the oil with a fuel feed, inverts the crankshaft, upgrades the pulley springs. But if I'm simplifying it, it just pushes more air in.
That's a big turbo, too.
It is actually. Why do you write Cowboy Killer on it?
Because there's a truck in the truck game named Cowboy.
Are you serious?
And that's the Cowboy Killer right there.
Ooh.
Are you serious?
And that's the Cowboy
18 naked cowboys in the showers at Ram Ranch.
Killer right there. Yeah, I'm serious.
Okay, we have some new wheels and tires from Custom Offsets to install on the truck today. Custom Offsets is the world's largest leading supplier of wheels and tires. I'm proud to announce.
Hell yeah, dude. That's how it's done.
Can you clean this mess up? I think it would help if you could work from here. I'm guessing it makes 600 now. I'm guessing it will be making around 20 to 30,000 after we're done. All right, you got it?
Yeah, you're done.
Appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, cool.
Before we put all 17 turbos on, we need to see how much power the truck is currently making. Okay, 397 horsepower is not bad, but what about a billion?
Dude just got a tank. Ha!
Stop! Stop! I think we're all done. I now present to all the 17 turbocharged Dodge Cummins.
Jesus Christ.
I had some notes that I took for this video. Make jokes about a whistling diesel. Talk about political views. Obviously, this is going to affect the drivability of the truck. We have brought in a diesel performance expert.
Diesel performance expert, Bruce Wilson.
What are we predicting happens? I'm guessing one of two things. It makes like 1,000 more horsepower or 20,000 more horsepower.
Or it doesn't run.
We have endometriosis lines.
Those are braided. It's like easier way to say that.
Okay.
Endometriosis lines.
Watch it
Yep.
not even run.
For sure.
My foot to the floor. 2, 1.
Just started already.
The ignition is on. Now I will turn it the rest of the way in 5, 4,
Can't even get out.
3, 2,
Dude.
1.5.
Wait.
0.1. I'm rotating the key to
Look
the
at those
second
gauges.
accessory position. I'm gonna begin applying pressure to the key. 0.9.
They ain't spinning.
It runs.
None of them are spinning.
They're not supposed to yet.
I hear them sucking in air.
Yeah.
It's under load.
Oh, we got one. It's trying.
They're spinning. He said they're spinning, yeah. You can hear it. Look, it's making boost.
Oh my god.
Dude.
Oh my god.
Oh, yeah.
Good smoke.
Oh my god. We made like 15 PSI immediately.
They don't spin. Oh, yeah.
Hello? No, someone's been shot in the head and I'm...
The truck is what needs washed. Dude, you're just making a mess.
Ha!
Hey, are we coming on the bathroom remodel?
I told you we couldn't afford that yet.
Well, the bathroom part isn't bathrooming anymore.
So let's not have you use the power washer ever again.
I was just trying to clean
Don't.
this. This looks great,
Huh.
actually. Wow, look at the difference. That's gonna look really good. So there's one major problem. Somehow we have to get these wheels off.
It's pretty easy. Just jack it up and take them off.
I have an idea.
Ooh.
What I want to do today is tire changing ASMR, so we can get some good audio of this. I buy all my truck wheels and tires from Custom Offsets because they have an option for everything, including this. Here we go. Whoa! Oh my god! That was sick! Wow. Oh no. I accidentally parked my Cybertruck right here. I hope a very fast tire doesn't hit it. Oh my god.
Why is the tire coming
Hold up,
off?
this is the wrong durability test. I'm not going to show you guys what it did. You'll have to see that in the Cybertruck durability test. Tax return season is here, so use your tax return for a set of wheels. That's what I did when I got my first set of wheels. From the mail.
Yeah, of course.
So you don't...
Use your fucking tax return on your vehicle, of course. Great investment. Great investment.
That's actually like the perfect time to get work done on your car.
So what did we learn here?
I think that like I was kind of right about the KillDozer. That like he sort of is awesome and like kind of did like I don't want to say he did the right thing, but he did it the best way. You know what I mean? Like the best way you can cause massive destruction to other people's shit. The least villainous way.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of KillDozer. I think we need more of them in this world.
Yeah.
And I think
especially compared to all the other like insane shit people do now, like that one's not so bad.
Yeah, I think it also does tell the true story of America, that all of your problems, they're really at the local level.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Ooh, and for our audience, I want to leave them with this. Do you have anything else, by the way?
No, I think I'm good.
Alrighty, 1 second. Oh, I hope the mic picked that up.
What'd you do, fart? I
Yeah,
couldn't hear it.
I ripped ass.
Good attempt, though.
Good night, everybody.